Hello, everyone. Brad Johnson here, and welcome to the Reality Whisperer Presents. And we're beginning our monthly series. We're looking to make this into a monthly series inside the Secret Space Program. And so today we're going to be talking to two amazing Secret Space Program insiders, just in regards to a lot of different questions, because I have interviewed both of them individually. And of course, the good news is many of you will be able to post your questions online through our Google Plus Hangouts app. So just go to the app and you can go ahead and post your question, and we're going to be getting to it in the latter half of the show. But basically, before we get into it, there's just a couple of announcements as well. The first announcement is that we have our Reality Whisperer webcast coming up this Tuesday. Special guest is Joshua Warren, and he will be talking about the Force, he will be talking about radionics, and he will be talking about the paranormal. And of course, the week after that, we have a brand new Secret Space Program insider that's going to be coming through, and his name is Johnny Alpha. So we have a third SSP insider that will be talking through the Reality Whisperer Presents and the Reality Whisperer webcast. So I'm looking forward to speaking to him as well, too. So other than those announcements, we're going to go ahead and get started for today. I'd like to welcome my two special guests, Randy Cramer and Elena Kapulnik. Thank you so much, both of you, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Wonderful to be here.
Awesome. All right, so I think what we're going to do first, just to kind of get things going, is just kind of share any particular types of updates, because people who have watched my channel have become very familiar with you, both of you, since we had some really amazing feedback and some really great views pertaining to both your interview, Randy, and your interview, Elena. Randy, let's start with you. Is there any particular type of updates that you wanted to share with anybody since we last talked?
Oh, sure. We've been discussing for a while now the possibility and or the potential of and or the rollout of possible disclosure events. Mm-hmm. I'd say now we're in the definitely, like it's happening kind of, we're rolling it out phase, and you should just sort of expect over the next months to see series of events sort of occurring. The latest thing that I think is going to kick that in the pants is the Snowden papers. They're going to release the rest of them over the next few weeks. They made that announcement on Wednesday or Thursday or something of this week. So sort of at the end of the week near the news dump, a lot of people haven't heard about it. Is, you know, when I'm talking to people, they're like, oh, really? I haven't heard that. So that's going to kind of be surprising and probably a pretty fast crescendo. I haven't seen them. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know if they're going to, at the last minute, what they're going to manage to pull anything out, or if it's going to stay contained. But we expect a disclosure bomb in there. We expect something to be big enough and significant enough, not just a bunch of photographs or, you know, somebody standing with an alien waving. I mean, we expect, and again, I haven't seen them, and this is trying to predict what people are going to decide to do before they do it, and this is not like trying to predict the future. This is actually trying to predict what is people are going to actually decide before it happens. And because I can't say that, all I can say is this super high probability that when those papers roll out, by the end of it, that there will be a disclosure bomb. So in the midst of a disclosure bomb, amongst all the other things that have been occurring around that, we again put a very high probability that, you know, President Obama will go ahead and make some kind of announcement, and how he chooses to sort of meet that information, preempt it, converse about it, we expect to be a moment to actually move it down the road, get the foot in the door, as it were. And I know a lot of people keep talking about, we got to have full disclosure now, we got to have full disclosure now. Can I tell you, please, from having talked to people who are sitting at these meetings who can tell you what is on paper, that would be a very, very life-costing thing if on Friday we just gave full disclosure. I just want to point out, people would die, and it would not be a good thing. If we kind of spiral it out over a few months, really, like a few months, you know, that really softens the cushions, the impact for a lot of different demographics that we've really stratified, and realized that information has to be kind of targeted through these demographics so that different levels of people who are in these demographics, you know, and their sort of shock and rebound levels can be dealt with, because it's very tinkering with people's brains and their social psychology to try and avoid shock. And okay, just to be clear, we really feel like there's this strong 85% of the population who will be fine. Like mentally, they'll just be like, oh, really? Or what? Oh, of course. I mean, there will be various reactions that we'll just be accepting, over a short period of time. We're really only concerned about a potential of a 15% who are already mentally fragile, who the possibility of schizophrenic, psychotic episodes, and things that can just like all of a sudden these people can just sort of snap. That's what we want to concern ourselves with about a little bit of cushioning, because the last thing you want is a tiny portion of the population who's already mentally fragile, to just snap and start to lose. We don't need, we don't need a tipping point effect of people running down the street setting themselves on fire, because they can't handle that. We don't need that, and we feel like a little cushioning will minimize that from happening. So just kind of expect that there's just going to be more and more and more. And so high probability there's a disclosure bomb in the Snowden papers. High probability there will be a conversation from the executive, and the president will have to make a statement. This could all take a while. This could all be weeks and sort of a few months down the road. But this is all going to come right in the middle of the election, which is going to be a big crazy mess. But again, I'll say our high probability prediction there is Bernie Sanders is going to win at the primary, going to win at the convention, going to take it at the general, and going to be the next president. And just for anybody who wants to argue with that, superdelegates don't count before the convention, so Hillary's getting a plus 400 that she doesn't deserve yet, she hasn't earned. So the actual delegate match will be neither one of them will make 1388 before the convention. I could go over the numbers, but I won't take the time. And it will be a contested convention, and the superdelegates will switch. We do know for a fact that Obama has given the superdelegates permission to switch. Bernie and he had a conversation last weekend, and Bernie was basically just, I want a fair fight. That's all I've wanted. I just want a fair fight. And apparently Obama was just like, okay, well, I'll talk to the superdelegates and let them know if they want to change their opinion. It's okay with me. So we know that has occurred. So we fully expect the high probability that he will get the nomination at the convention. Donald Trump does not want to be president. He does not want to put his money into a blind trust and live in a two-story schlocky house and actually have to have responsibility that people can hold him to. He wants to be media king forever, and he will continue to do so with the book he writes about how he duped everybody. So don't worry about it. It's all going to be fine.
Great.
So that's my basic update. Don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. But it's going to be a little wild and crazy show for a while. But there's so much going on that it will also be like, what? And then this, and then of course, Donald Trump and the socialist Jew, and then the aliens come in. Oh yeah, of course. That's of course what happens at this point. So some of that sort of getting everything, going on stage at the same time is enough so people are also cushioned by that. When there's a bunch of stuff happening, they're not going to be as shocked if it was the only thing that was happening. So it's sort of being dealt with, and I think that most of the negative people who are against it and rallying to do things against it are minimal problematic, and I don't think that they're really a big threat. I don't think there's going to be any major collapses or FEMA camps or anything like that. I think we've basically sort of handled all those people and neutralized most of those departments, and mostly just gotten everybody to agree that there's a better way to do it. And so they were a small faction anyway that was just getting collusive agreement mostly through fear, and there's nobody else to, who's got a plan. Well, now there's other people with a plan, and so other groups and agencies can go, no, we'll go with you. That's cool. We'll ally ourselves with your organization. I think I'm out.
All right, well, that's good. I mean, there's a lot of information, so I'm pretty sure some people may be asking more about follow-ups when we get into the audience Q&A later. But again, that's a lot of stuff to take in, because I remember you were saying that within the next few months we're going to start seeing a lot of these changes happen. It doesn't have to wait a few years, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rest of what the end of this year brings. And Elena, let's start with you as well. What information do you have that you wanted to share since our last talk?
Well, I've been following psychically all the Earth movements and changes. There's a lot going on with all the ET alliances. They want disclosure as well. Some of them are like, hey, we're going to come in and do it if your governments, don't do some kind of a disclosure as well. Psychically reading the way things are going, the monetary system, they want to change that, clean it up. There might be a blackout of 5 weeks of silence, blah, blah, blah. That's a small possibility. If they want to cover something up and change something up with the banks, switch it up, they might do that. So have 3 weeks of food, have some gold as backup, 10% of your whatever portfolio. I've been seeing a lot of people pulling out of the market because everybody, even people who aren't awakened, they have this sort of expectation something's big's going to happen, so they pulled their money out of the markets because they don't want to lose money if something does happen, if the markets crash suddenly and there's something big going on. So that's been huge. I've been telling people, just make sure your stock portfolios are cleaned up. Make sure you're not dumping money into the market right now. This is not a good time. Pull out. And my friends have all done it because I said, look, and they're asking me, who are your financial advisors? I'm saying they're people that are in the know. Mm-hmm. And my financial advisors are off-world, so they're the ETs because
it's kind of interesting too, because I've also had that kind of same guidance as well too, because a lot of people have come to me and asking for investment advice. Actually, talking to a dronus about investment advice, or talking to an extraterrestrial about investment advice, which is kind of funny. But they just asked me, what should I do? Should I look into the market 2016? He says, no. If good, it might be good for you to kind of stay out of the market in 2016. Maybe wait till about 2017. There's going to be a lot more stability around that time. But 2016 is a lot of stuff shuffling right now. So like what Randy is saying as well too, is that there's a lot of stuff happening right now. There's a lot of stuff coming out. Disclosures really just kind of on the next round the corner here. So there's a lot of stuff definitely going on. So that would definitely make sense.
I mean, the planet itself is energetically going through her shift into fourth, fifth density. So there's movement in the tectonic plates. There's movement underground in Agartha network. They're all getting ready for this. They're all moving in big. Those alliances are talking to each other more. Actually, they're not staying within their own groups. They're actually talking, because if some form of disclosure comes, these guys have to be up on it too. They're underground, but they're watching us. They're watching. They're very interested in what's going on the surface. And if there is disclosure, they might have to make their own announcements to the world. Hey, we exist. We've been here for a long time. There's this group that has been on planet blah 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 for this millions of years. Your planet is older than you think. A lot of archaeological discoveries being made about the pyramids, that there's all kinds of hidden secrets and chambers in the pyramids. They might find archaeological evidence of ET existence. So that's also been going on behind the scenes, and they're wondering, how are we going to disclose all of this? And NASA's fed up, basically. They want to disclose. NASA wants to disclose. They're tired of being the front for all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah. All this stuff about finding exoplanets, water on Mars. There's artifacts on Mars. Everybody knows it. The photos have been doctored, and slowly experts are unpixelating what was pixelated, and you can clearly see what's there.
You think the public conversations about those photos are interesting? You should hear the conversations that the people at NASA are having about the photos that they're looking at. I mean, it's an even crazier conversation. I mean, are you kidding? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Are you kidding me? Yeah, I mean, they're really infuriated that they've been blacked out of the whole, covert technology process. They're really quite infuriated that they've dedicated their lives to space exploration and they've just been handicapped at the knees. They're pretty mad. They're pretty upset about it, yeah.
I mean, both of you have been on Mars, right? So, I mean, you have a lot of the experience about what's actually there. And it's interesting, too, because I'm talking to Johnny Alpha here in the next couple of weeks, and he's got all this information on Mars as well, too, about these really large creatures, about these giant ants that are the size of cars, and these giant snakes and all that stuff. I guess he was talking about kind of like the middle of the equator area of the planet, because I remember you were saying, Randy, they were kind of up around
pretty
north.
Cold. It's cold, and most of the big reptiles don't like it that far up. And they did slip in a couple weeks ago that our mass gas spectrometer found oxygen in the atmosphere. Oh, look at that! So now we have running liquid water and oxygen, and look at that! Like, so when we talk about these sort of transitions, that's exactly what we're talking about. 7 months ago, there was dead, lifeless. You couldn't do anything on Mars. We were maybe going to, what was our hope there? And then now running liquid water, oxygen, maybe there's trees and plants and animals. I mean, it just doesn't take much longer for every few months or 6 months to have another discovery. And, look what we found in the satellite pictures. There's some trees in there. And I mean, it just takes that kind of progress to be very short time in the future to be like, oh, of course there's life on Mars. Yeah, of course we found that out. I mean, it would just not be a big deal to people anymore. So
Exactly.
I'm excited
Oh,
about that personally.
oh, me too. I can't wait till there's more disclosure on Mars, especially with Mars as well. Lena, how about you? What kind of things did you see when you were on Mars? Like when you had those experiences, what things stood out?
Well, for me, it was serving on the bases on Mars and basically putting the infrastructure for informational bases. They
Hmm.
have a lot of bases on there where information goes back and forth about intel data, about staff, back and forth, back and forth.
Hmm.
I even found an image. It's from Mass Effect, from the video game. There's a lot of disclosure from Mass Effect about
Oh
Mars
yeah.
and the ships and secret space programs. And on one of the ships that I served, it said information center behind the guy, behind the military guy standing. Like, I remember that. I left breadcrumbs for myself. Oh, go into this video game and look at that, because there's a lot of disclosure in video games.
Yes. Yeah, that's
So
true.
there's a lot of human bases on Mars and a lot of intel changing hands, quite a
Yeah.
bit. Operational bases on Mars are amazing. They have the best tech for everything on Mars. So that's stuff I've been remembering. Purple sky, purple blue sky that changes colors all the time. It's not just red. It switches colors. There's oxygen in certain spots. You can walk on the planet on the surface without having to wear your protective suit, and there's beautiful mesas, desert-like locations. Hey, you can build resorts there, and oh wow, that's beautiful. It's warm in certain places too.
It's got a pretty varied set of ecosystems, that's for sure. I mean, they're definitely. I mean, I had the fortune or misfortune of being in one of the most inhabitable northern zones, of the entire planet. So it wasn't exactly as friendly. We didn't spend any time outside without environment suits on, but you could occasionally flip up your lid and breathe the cold, fresh air and so forth. But it was otherwise pretty harsh. But yeah, certainly from the satellite pictures I've seen and other reports I've seen, it's a pretty interesting and fascinating little areas that they're small kind of oasis mostly areas from the sky at this point because they're still doing the terraforming process. They'll get back to it at some point, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, we're gonna get into Mars here in a little bit. I just wanted to ask both of you guys right now, and I guess we'll start with you, Randy. In both of your opinions, what do you feel the purpose of the secret space program is? Now, do they have an ultimate agenda? Are they like, is it like a bunch of polarized groups within the SSP that are trying to triumph over one another? Like, what's the big picture with the secret space program?
I think that the main goal of the covert military space program from their charter, which is basically made up of Naval Space Command, United States Marine Corps Special Section, and then a few other military intelligence covert space programs that form Earth Defense Force, and their charter is pretty specific about protecting the human race, humanity, the planet, and the colonies and bases and so forth. They've had to certainly one of the questions that came up in that mandate was whether or not or at what level to interfere with what was clearly becoming a threat to other mandates of protecting the planet and civilization, humanity, and so forth. And after some discussion with the senior officers, eventually did decide, okay, we're going to have to do some stuff. And then, people like me and Corey get to appear and start talking and doing things and all kinds of. They start talking to people, information starts flowing, conversations start happening, and we begin the process. So they were, I would say they were the necessary domino to fall in this whole process so that we could really begin the operation of disclosure, because really once they were behind that, it was just going to happen. It was just a matter of how it was going to happen. So I'm pretty sure that their main goal is to do their job and keep everybody safe, and to try not to get into any other business that they can, because they'd like the other agencies to do their job and take care of that stuff, and they would really like to stick to their job, which is keeping out things that they think they need to keep out, because that's tough enough for them.
How about the trade exchange that they're doing across the star system? Is that just interplanetary corporate conglomerate, or is that
I
SSP?
mean, the military has to have some of their own trade, obviously, because they are buying and trading equipment. They have contracts and so forth, but mostly they're still protecting. They're like, if they have to protect shipments and make sure that things are going to and from safely, that's part of their job sometimes. But again, their job is what the military's job is, to keep the civilians safe and alive fly from things that might otherwise want to swat them and eat them and so forth. So they're pretty straightforward bunch of guys, I think. It's always, I hate to say it, but it's always the spooks. It's always the intel guys. It's always the special agents that come from some other department that are there to work on something special that end up being the problem characters in any of those scenarios. Most of the officers, you know, are sworn to codes, and they're military disciplined, and that's really the square that they live in, and they really have no desire to be outside of that square much, to be honest.
Very good. Elena, how about you with your perspective in regards to what you feel the SSP represents? Like, what's their big picture?
Serve and defend, that's off-world interests and stuff, that's for sure, but there's always as well been research and development into genetic manipulation, DNA modification, advanced healing technology, advanced genetic DNA restructuring, changing your genetic makeup basically, so if you're living on another planet, you're better suited for that environment. So they do a lot of medical stuff as well. It is a lot of military stuff, but they do a lot of R&D that's also involved with the medical stuff, so you're not popping pills. Actually, if you have a disease, they give you a little serum injection of a drug, liquid drug, and you're healthy. And you're kept healthy while you're serving, while you're doing your contract. That's been my experience, because I have a lot of health issues, and when I did my 60 and back, I was always age regressed to look younger than I am because of the work that I was doing. I was also genetically manipulated to look like human-like ETs as well. So they have the ability to change your DNA from human to ET back to human and whatnot to modify you genetically. They have a lot of healing technology. So say your arm was blown off, it can be regrown.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask Randy about that as well, too, because we're going to get to your aspect about age regression as well, too, momentarily. Randy, can you talk about this healing technology? Because I know you were talking about it like in other videos as well, too, about trying to push this forward and actually make this an actual technology that we can use here on Earth.
Oh, yeah, the holographic regenerating medical bed was pretty much the major technology that we use, because it just fixes everything. And especially when you're talking about where you're having to deal with massive tissue damage and regeneration and so forth, you can't just inject a serum into somebody's arm to grow back their hand and so forth, and to restore a liver that's been blown out. So pretty much the holographic regenerating medical beds was the only thing that could keep people together fast enough and quick enough. There are certainly field meds, techs have stuff to keep you stabilized and alive so you don't expire and die, and things that will keep your organs from totally failing and so forth. And the beds in there have a temporal stasis field in it that basically slows down, the temporal speed of the tissue degradation and so forth. So essentially you're just dying a lot slower until they can get you back and actually patch you together. And then, as I've said before, if your head gets blown off and they recover it, they can stuff you in the fridge, and then there's also a stasis field in the fridge that they can hold your brain in, and it's a cooler.
Seriously?
And then when they get and when they get you back, then if they can still hang on to your soul, it's still retrievable, you're still connected, then they can actually transplant your head back onto a clone body and then restore the cells there and put you back. And that takes a while. That can take like 10 to 15 days.
That is insane.
But yeah, it can take 10 to 15 days to do like a full head transplant replacement.
Doctor, my head's been blown off. Oh, okay. Well,
Well, it happened a lot when we had this. Basically, it was like this shoulder-mounted rocket launcher that kind of would pop up and flip over, and then fire little rockets out of it. And the reptiles would occasionally psionically detonate them, and then basically just make them explode right behind your neck, and your head would pop off and then fly through the air. And so we had a lot of decapitations for a while until we stopped using those, because we got tired of people getting decapitated. So
unbelievable.
Get their heads blown off. But I've had my head blown off a number of times. It's not any fun at all, but it's like everything else. I'm just telling you, once that you've done something 5 or 6 times, like blown arm, leg, or head, you're just like, oh god dang, it was my head again.
What do those memories translate as? Do you feel like there's some sort of like sensation that comes through your mind, like when you?
Oh, usually it's the sensation of going up in the air and spinning around and around and around, because that's what your head is doing. And then going, oh crap, my head got blown off again. I hope someone grabs my helmet before I roll away. And this, before you lose consciousness, because your blood's spinning out of your neck and someone has to grab you and get you to the med techs and they stick you in the fridge. It's crazy, I know, but again, once it's happened a few times, it's just like, it's Thursday afternoon again.
Is there like almost kind of like a total loss of life with that person when they completely deceased, that they just decide, oh, we'll just make a clone of him, and then just
no, that isn't actually how it works in on the battlefield where we work. Essentially, you are retrievable if there's a single cord still that they can yank you back in with, and they can stabilize your body enough to hang on to that and then pull you back in, then you're retrievable. If you are unretrievable, that means that they couldn't retrieve your soul connection and they basically had to scrap you out of the program. And then
terminate you.
Well, yeah, then your body goes to the incinerator and your file gets terminate, and then they send you back. That goes back to processing. Then apparently what they do is then they make a clone that's the age when they took you back that they insert into your life. So if you actually die, then a clone wakes up in your bed the next morning instead of you waking up in your bed the next morning, and then your parents have to wonder why you're weird the rest of your life and why. I thought that thing was on your other eyebrow, not your left eyebrow, and things weird tics that can be different like that when you make a clone that aren't 100% perfect, and that they don't necessarily bother to make 100% perfect because they don't care. And so, but if you're retrievable, then eventually, however they fix your body back up, then they stick you back in. But we did not want clones as a part of our operation. And then when we did for a while have like a whole brigade of clones, it was an experiment to sort of try and manage a larger clone army, and it was just it ended up being a disaster. That's all I'm going to say, is that clones turn out to be really difficult to train and really stupid, and so they're really, really difficult to deal with. It's really hard to take just a pure clone and make it a soldier without cybernizing it and doing a whole bunch of other things that make it super controllable. Otherwise, they're just a mess. And I always have this question, because this comes up. They've cloned a few dogs, a few of these like awesome dogs that this company's, oh, we can clone that dog for you, and they've cloned them. There's the stories always say, what an amazing thing, they cloned this dog. I have never once, and I've checked every single one, found a follow-up story saying, oh, I love my clone dog. I want to, because I'm betting you that those dogs have the exact same problem that cloned humans do, that they are difficult to train, they have behavior problems, and they become an absolute nightmare because they're not a real living, conscious being. They're a freaking clone, and so they're kind of messed up.
As well, there's the memory imprinting. When you sign up for your contract, they actually do take genetic samples of you, of your DNA, even memory imprinting. You're attached to scanners, and they do memory imprints of all your memories and stuff. And if they do a clone, they try their best to graft those memories onto the clone, so the clone is at least acceptable in society, can function as a being. Somewhat normal fitting in.
They try and make it the best functional copy that they can. I'll give them that. But it is definitely not a perfect process.
It's kind of like that. It's kind of like that movie, The Sixth Day, with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not sure if both of you have seen that.
Yeah, I have seen that.
Putting him in that little thing, and they take a photograph of the brain in that sense. The photograph, is that kind of like the very similar kind of technology that they have in the SSP, or is it?
I bet it takes a lot longer than a flash of to get the brain memory down. But it's I'm sure it's some kind of way to record as many of the engrams and logarithms and neural pathways that you can, and then transfer that over to the clone and get as basically what you're trying to do is copy the software from one person to another person, which is just more difficult than it is with a computer, is all I'm saying. So they do a pretty good job, but it's I'm not saying we're good at that technology really yet.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
And also,
Elena, are you aware of that? Yeah.
Yeah,
are you
of
aware
course.
of that kind of technology?
Yeah, I helped make that technology, and also it depends on the person, how complex or simple the person was. their memory engrams could hold a lot of secret information from other cellular memories. If they're an ET Earth inbound person who's had ET experiences and memories and know about that, that's harder. You have to almost block that stuff out so the person doesn't get that as well with the memory transfer if they're cloned. Their memory engrams are tricky. It's literally graphing your memories, your life experiences. That gets put in a special computer, and that person's, like, not their soul essence, but their life experience has been put into the computer, into storage, and it's on file. It's on file. And if you need that clone, that stuff can be taken over from the computer and put in the person. You get injected with these needles and gets implanted into your head, into the clone's head, and they hope it's a functioning clone, that it won't remember this or that. So it's like certain memories, they can mute it so it's not active, so you don't have it actively spinning and rolling around in your head.
Wow.
So, and it takes, hey, if you want, even a clone can access that later with a lot of training. If you do a lot of training, you can access those memories. You could get your stuff, pull it out. So it really depends on how complex or simple the person was to begin with.
There are also rare cases when a person's soul will leave that body but find another clone, and sometimes even find their original clone and latch back onto their body, and because it's familiar enough that they'll do that. It can happen, and then they might just come, wake up going, oh, that was the weirdest dream, and their soul actually made the journey back to another one of their bodies. Wow. It can happen. If you have other residual clones elsewhere, you can wake up in the middle of the night because you're dreaming inside a clone body. I mean, there's weird things that can happen when you have a clone out there of yourself, as far as how your consciousness can travel from one being to the other. It's a weird. I mean, there are ETs that use it as a science. It's one of the reasons they make clones of themselves, essentially acts as like teleoperating drones, and they can essentially move their soul consciousness into these drone clones of themselves, and it becomes
like the Zetans.
Yeah, it's biologically safe is the number one reason. It's biologically safe. You don't have to risk exposing yourself to any environmental, bacterial, anything at all. You're essentially, it's a completely safe, you're putting on a super serious latex glove, and entering that environment with a whole other clone body.
Yeah, let's talk about
so it's a complex technology. I wouldn't say we're very good at it yet, but it's a complicated technology.
Yeah, but if you're looking at the idea of the Zetans as well too, because that's what I might get into.
They perfected it.
Yeah, have you had like personal experiences with the Zetans and like said how they are able to engineer themselves in this particular way?
None of the experiences I've ever had with them I can say were very positive. So I mean, I know of them, and I know that we've certainly got a lot of the information we could from technology and information that we could from them, and when we realized that wasn't going very well, we had to rethink that whole relationship. And otherwise, my relationship with them is a rocky one, since it's basically the only other time that I've met them face to face was in combat, and it was ugly, and we won, and that's all I really, we stomped them, and I'm happy about that. But I don't like.
They're very unemotional beings. They have no emotion.
They have what I would call the most tiniest sliver of an inkling of what emotional feeling might be, because they can experience fear and terror of their own, like threat of their own existence. They actually can, but it comes as such a shock to them usually, because they so don't ever anticipate that it's going to happen, that when it does happen, they're like, oh my god, I'm going to die. And so they can have like the sliver of emotion there. It's just so very little tiny whatever it is that they have a hard time taking that very narrow band and turning it into anything expansive, because their intellectual capacity is also so high. It's pounding on that little thread of emotion. Basically, if you had the giant left brain and this little teeny right brain, and your left brain was just pounding on it all the time, that's kind of where you would be with that, is like whatever inkling of emotion you might have would just be being logicked away by this superior intellect all the time.
They're very suppressed. Very
very tiny and incredibly suppressed. So, I mean, they'll rationalize their way out of anything until their life is actually, about to be over, and then they can experience fear and panic, and actually, and actually, they can actually beg for mercy. they can actually beg for mercy and be terrified and beg for mercy. But it's a very weird thing to experience when they do have this sort of last minute panic before death. But it's not all the time. It's occasionally, and it's this very shocking thing that comes as a total surprise to them because they're otherwise not intellectually expecting that they're intellectualizing this is going to be fine.
Right.
You know, right up until the moment, oh crap, this isn't fine, and their body literally overwhelms their intellect and tells them you're going to die. Oh my God! And same experience that we kind of have, but they suppress it in such a way that it rarely happens to them. But it's weird when it does, but it can't. It can happen. So they have this tiny experience of emotional experience that's not very wide at all. Not very wide at all.
And it's interesting. The SSPs have technology like stasis pods where there's all these chemicals brewing, and if you had a lot of traumatic experiences out in the field, you know, like when you're fighting and stuff and you've had something blown off and it's so traumatic, you're scared, you're in fear, your service contract is almost over, you're put into that stasis pod where you spend about 3 to 6 weeks and you're like, everything psychological is being rebalanced with the chemicals and all of that stuff. You're basically sleeping and you're regenerating your psychological body field, everything is being rebalanced. Put back as a whole acceptable person, so all these traumatic memories do not overwhelm you. Like, oh, this happened to me. Oh my God, I had my head blown off. So you're psychologically like being almost calmed down and rebalanced. Because it is traumatic. It can be very traumatic. So
head blown off. So yeah, that would be quite traumatic. Elena, have you had experiences with the Zedans, the Greys, Elena?
Yes, actually, I was part of a mission to try to get these guys to unhook themselves from technology. You know, because they're so hooked up to their tech, they forget that they could be human again. You take off, you take off those silly transmitters that they wear, where they're hooked into the computer 24/7, in whatever station they're in, whatever base they're in. You unhook them. Their emotions slowly come back and they begin to feel human again, or as close to as what emotional beings feel. When they're not hooked up to their technology all the time, their emotions do kick in somewhat and they start feeling things like they're alive. But when they're hooked up to that technology, they're in it. It's like being in a virtual reality for them. They're so focused on what they're doing. That's
like watching TV too much. Like watching too much TV. Yeah, you're syncing with that technology and becoming that technology vibration instead of a human being when you watch too much TV or play too much video games.
Isn't that kind of like giving the idea of a Zedan philosophy with a lot of what we're doing? Because we have so much technology. People are plugged into their iPhones, they're texting, they're typing, they're so immersed in the computer. It almost feels like that's almost kind of like a Zedan philosophy, that they're just basically hooked up to this technology so much.
Yes, for sure. I mean, they have this singular mission. They're focused on doing this mission, one thing, and they focus on it and they get it done. They're like worker robots. They get it done. That's the mentality. Once they're finished, like what's my next assignment? What am I gonna do next? It's like one thing after another with them. They don't take time out to just feel stuff and relax. That's not their way. That's not how they're programmed.
They have no concept of leisure. They don't understand why we do it at all. It doesn't make any sense to them. No, leisure makes no sense to them.
It's kind of like they almost disrespect their bodies as well too. Because I had one person I was talking to, a client, who basically said that he saw a Zedan one time and he basically grabbed it by the arm and he basically got a telepathic response from him saying, "Let go of my punishment suit now." So basically just seeing it as like a punishment suit or a container, and all of that. And it's basically like it's almost kind of like the pure atheist in that way, right? It's just all pure technology, tech.
I would, we go from psych profiles, and I would say their psych profile, would read like a hyper-intellectualist who understands the metaphysics and the spiritual nature of the universe, but because of their inability to experience, would feel completely trapped in their bodies. It's part of the reason why I'm sure they're trying to get some soul back to try and like escape, what they feel is this terminal prison that they intellectually, mathematically understand, but because they refuse to develop their emotional sense of connection to it, have no ability to get beyond being totally aware that you're in this amazing universe that you can't participate in. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's kind of their punishment, I guess, is the ability to understand things be way beyond their ability to participate in them and connect to them. So their intellectual ability to understand things far beyond their ability to experience them might feel like an incredible kind of punishment.
Now, are they just basically pure AI? Are they just basically having AI in their body, and that's basically how they're?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that they've been connected to each other psionically through machines and through computers that do all that as well, and linked to a interactive system of machines for so long that they really just have taken on, like any animal that gets enough behavioral modification, it's just going to behave like the thing that it most identifies with and respects in its social group. And when your world is machines, essentially you're sociologically telling your brain that the machine is the organizer of the social group, and the machine is what we're serving, and the machine is what we're. So really, mentally, you become a servant of the machine. The machine isn't necessarily your tool anymore, but it becomes this thing that you service and you maintain, and that you're doing the jobs of the machine, even though basically whatever mission statements they created for themselves, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, are just being acted out by hyper intellectualized individuals who are, dutifully inclined to just keep with the plan, keep with the plan, keep with the plan. The machines and everyone and the leaders say keep with the plan. The machines and the leaders say keep with the plan, and they're just going to keep with the plan, not having any real individual thought about whether their destiny should do that or not. So yeah, that's just a foreign concept to them as far as I understand.
Okay, well, we'll move on. We'll move on past the Greys. What I wanted to finish the conversation with Randy was your healing technology as well too. Is there a way that we can recreate this? What do we need to make something like this, like a holographic replication technology?
Yes. Well, essentially, it's not as rocket surgery as some people might think it is. And so the two basic components of that technology to make it work are a computer software that essentially you can enter in a genetic code, and it will create a CGI model of that genetic code for you, which some smart university scientists did a couple years ago. Crudely, it's not the resolution that we would require, but that software has been created. So I can tell you from a development standpoint, not having to start at square one and develop that software from the get-go, basically being able to adapt someone who's already made that software and just focus on getting better resolution, that's a much more doable task. That's something that we can sort of predict a time span. Once we can dedicate time engineers to that task, we expect within a certain time frame of years, not decades, that we'll have solutions for the resolution that we need for that component. The other component essentially is a holographic projecting lens, and we have those. We have pretty good holographic projectors. What we don't have is something that can project to the resolution of cellular level. Now, what I will say is, even I can say that, and I'm going to tell you right now that 90% of any of the company, 99% of any company or engineers that tried to undertake that task without knowing a couple other secrets that you need to know about the configuration of that holographic lens, believe me, they are not going to be able to replicate the technology from just those two things. But once you understand the special properties about that lens that need to be special, and you can get the resolution that you need, and you have the computer program that gets you the resolution you need, then you're basically able to project a very, very small, high-resolution image and recode a very, very high-density area in a very small space, and so you're able to make very, very small, high-resolution adjustments about that size. So then you can start to rebuild, a finger, start to build, an arm slowly in a little spiral as comes around. So it's a very slow process at this point because you're working on very, very tiny parts of the body. But that's, oh, we did it! Hey! From that point, you're just talking about developing the technology to get more precise, better, bigger spread, more power, a higher powered computer to give you, more coding per image that you can make per second, per centimeter, and all these issues that you have to think about in the engineering. And then essentially you've got the ability to restore any damaged organ, fix the cellular structure, chemical structure of any body. So all forms of heavy metal poisoning, every kind of bacteria toxicity, blah, 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 could all be straightened out. Damaged organs of any kind can be completely restored. And the big one is, of course, the Rosetta Stone of medicine, regrowing limbs, right? The thing that, modern medicine is yet to be able to, say, well, we can put a limb back on that's been blown off. I mean, we're great with prosthetics, and we're just going to get better and better with prosthetics if that's what we focus on. But I think we can just grow stuff back, and it's actually cheaper, faster, easier, to be honest. There's less time, energy, resources, and dollars that would go into regrowing someone's arm than building a robot arm for that person and putting a robot arm on them. So in the end, and it turns out that when you've done all of that, and this is things that I know from what we know about the med beds that the military gets from the contractors that they contract for, and the ones that they build themselves, that we're not allowed to have one, but I'm allowed to take what I know and make one. That's the loophole, right? What we know from the materials costs, what goes into it, you're talking about building something, an end product that is less than a quarter of the cost of an MRI machine. So when you're talking about something that you're going to be able to create for a fraction of the cost of an MRI machine, and that can fix anything over a period of time, then you start to be able to address everything that's the most serious, everything that's the most critical, growing limbs back, obviously, terminal children's medicine and organ transplants for children and so forth. But eventually you get to a place where not only can you fix everything, but cellular regeneration for life extension is just not even complicated at that point. So it really becomes this super low cost when you're done with all of that research and development, this very, very low cost medical solution that fixes everything, which when you start to look at the entire medical structure of here are the problems, here are the costs and solutions for those problems, and what those charts sort of look like, and when you can make all of that go away and go, here's a stack of problems, and they can all be dealt with this one thing that costs this much, then all the medical problems are dealt with a GDP that's like this instead of one that's going to break our spine if it gets up to 23%. So it's essentially, we feel that pharmacology, surgery, prosthetics, dead end. It's a dead end of medical technology in the sense that if you just keep going down that road, the cost, the exponential cost of those things versus the benefit, it just outweighs, and it becomes completely pointless to continue to pursue that kind of medical technology. So we think at some point you just have to go, we're not doing leeches anymore, and we're going to do this instead, and just transitioning to something that's way better and cheaper and more effective, and fixes everything. And all I can say is,
working with people right now to make this medbed a reality?
We've certainly talked to some people about the parts and the components that we're going to need to put together and how they need to be put together. What we're mostly waiting for at the moment is to resolve some other projects to get paid for, so that we can put money in the research and development. Actually, what it just comes down to is, when we're able to get paid for a few other things that we're working on, we will be able to actually hire engineers. And that's really where, when I hire 5 engineers and I say, here's your job, here's what we're doing, and we go over everything that I know and that then get to teach them, and as we research what we know in the public sphere, and as we start to break down all that information like a team of engineers would, then we're starting the process. So at this point, we're like waiting for the funding to come from something else that we're waiting to finish. But we don't expect that that's going to be 5 years down the road. We expect within 24 months that I will have engineers working on the process. We expect less than a decade to have a functional model that can pass muster and work on a person.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, we think that's just a completely reasonable goal based on what goals have to be achieved and what resources, time, energy, resources have to be put in to accomplish them. It's not rocket surgery. It's not going to take like building a rocket or even like building an MRI. It's going to actually be quite a bit easier and cheaper than that.
Okay, excellent.
I mean,
Elena,
these really smart people, but you know.
well, of course, yeah, exactly. Alina, do you have experience with the med beds as well too? Like, does it come into memory relating to these healing beds?
Yes, it does. From the
Mhm.
SSPs, I was helping to build these med beds for the regenerating of the bodies. Like there's this liquid thing, there's the bed itself. It sort of looks like an MRI and has all of these lasers attached to it where it regenerates your parts and stuff, right? Your body parts.
Mhm.
And you lie on this liquid gel thing and it encompasses your body and it helps to take away the scars, all that stuff, the burns, and it works on you and you lie in it and just kind of like you're in stasis. You're basically sleeping while the process is going on, regenerating your body. The lasers work on you, the lenses work on you, everything focuses
Hmm.
and basically puts you back together.
Wow.
I did a presentation on this. You may have seen it.
Yes, I have. Yep.
Yes, it's exactly there's images of what these med beds look like. I call them meditechs. They're not really even beds. They're meditechs because
Hmm.
they're advanced medical technology that puts you back together is what basically it is. You lie on it, you're in this gel thing, and it basically regenerates parts of you while the lasers with the lenses take away your scars and any other issues that you have on the
So
body.
if you had like a blown off limb, would it just start working to repair it?
Yes, with the lasers it does, but like Randy was saying, you need the proper lenses, you need the proper vibrational frequencies, you need all of that stuff to work together in tandem for
Yeah.
it to work properly to regenerate you physically. I mean, all this tech is already out there in the SSPs. There's even images of it on the internet. They
Hmm.
just don't say what it is that you're exactly seeing images of until you actually take those images and you start writing about it. This is that. And
So they're
people,
just keeping everything in plain sight for you, saying, "Here it is, people." Oh, but this is fiction. This is.
yeah, exactly. So those lasers and lenses work in conjunction with the gel while you're lying on it, and it fixes you.
Hmm.
It has your genetic blueprint on file in the system, in the computer system. Basically, you press some buttons, you say, I want this piece of body part regenerated. This is the genetic code for this, how this should be sequenced. And the machinery goes and does its job.
Wow, very cool. Now,
And
Elena, you also have experience with the age regression technology, because I know Randy has a different experience. Because Randy, you were saying that you were from kind of like grown from a petri dish, then came back and kind of served as a clone.
Basically, my body was kind of like old enough and messed up enough that it was just get a younger clone, hatch a younger clone out, stick him back in that, and then put him back. That was basically
Exactly.
age regression, was stick him in a younger clone. But
But Elena,
there's a
with
number
the
of different processes that I know achieved the same purpose. So
right, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Elena, with your perspective on the age regression technology, how does this work? So if I was to go inside a room and say, okay, I'm looking to regress my age maybe to 20 years old and stuff like, what would be the procedure to make that happen?
Well, there's different types of technologies to make it happen. They can move your human body 0 point. They can move it forward or backwards in time, and that's with your frequency of the body to age regress you that way. It takes a lot longer. There's also drug age regression where they can basically tinker with your DNA. You can put all these drug serums into you to age regress you back to a younger state. So
Do we
there's
know what kind of drugs they're using? Like, do we have like the scientific name for them, or is it like a combination?
no. All I remember is that these drugs get attached to your isotopes in your body,
Hmm.
to your neurons, to your isotopes, and what we have is like our bodies are like chronometers. Our DNA itself has the codes to age regress itself. We're just not evolved yet to that point where we can do it ourselves.
Right.
So through this genetic drugs and genetic manipulation, they could simply put in a bunch of serums into you, and they attach themselves to your neurons, to your body isotopes. So we do have radiation in our body naturally. So
Hmm.
these drugs just go to work on age regressing you, fixing your organs, fixing whatever neural damage there is, and they did it on me multiple times to keep me young for special projects that they had me do. So my experience was mostly with the drugs and the DNA tinkering.
So it feels like the drugs are kind of like a temporary measure to kind of make you temporarily young, and then it kind of wears off after a while. Is there a
After 10 or 15 years, it wears
10 or 10,
off.
15 years? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a permanent aspect? Like if you were to say like lay down in a bed And is it able to work along that way and basically kind of like regressing you? Because you said it works at this
Yes.
point field. So is this like
Yes.
a bed-like technology?
Yes, it is a bed-like technology, and it has lasers and certain frequencies where it works on your human 0-point ZTR. It's called ZTR,
The
zero
zero
point
time
human.
reference, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it age regresses you like backwards and forwards as well. 1 hour forwards, 1 hour backwards, and then it has to be meshed all together to make it as a whole component again. That technology takes time. It takes from a week to an hour. It depends how complicated stuff is, and your memories have to be re-imaged as well to make sure you have your proper memories and not memory recall, because some people do get memory recall when they're age regressed 5,
Now,
10 years down the road.
is this type of bed able to be reproduced with what we have on the planet today? Like, are we able to reproduce this type of technology?
It would take a few years to reproduce it. There is some alien exotic technology that was reverse engineered in the SSPs to do this. It's a lot more advanced now than it used to be in Corey's time, like say 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It evolves very quickly now, so it's more advanced. They prefer to do it with drugs now, actually. It's much more quicker and it's cheaper. And the serums, it's exotic ET tech that they've been able to acquire with the serums. It has worked permanently. They've actually been able to fix that issue.
Interesting.
There's articles on age regression that are coming out all the time, how your genetic DNA could be manipulated, you could be age regressed backwards. There's scientific stuff that's slowly coming out on the internet. They're doing these studies. I was reading an article that your body is a chronometer, and that it has the natural capability of age regressing you backwards on your own if there's enough evolution. But they've been able to do that with drugs. So you have the right information, you have the right technology, and you can do almost anything with it to age regress you backwards. And there's a number of technologies. There's older ZTR technology, there's the newer drug serums. Sometimes it's mixed together. It really depends on how long you've served. The longer you've served in the SSP, the more work has to be done on you to age regress you.
Wow, amazing. And again, a reminder to everybody who's tuning in right now, we are going to be getting to your questions here probably within the next 45 minutes or so. So if you do have a question, just feel free to use the Q&A app that you'll find on the Google Hangouts. Just click on that little icon, and you'll see your screen come up, and go ahead and post your questions. So we'll be getting to your questions shortly. What I wanted to talk about next was about the hybrid programs. Randy, because I know you've had a lot of dealings with a lot of different types of ET beings. What is the hybrid programs that are coming through? There's a lot of talk about, just from my own accounts as well too, about other ET beings coming to Earth and basically abducting people, and in that sense, extracting some of their genetic stock and making these hybrid programs. Randy, are you aware of any particular type of hybrid programs that are happening within the SSP?
Well, other than that, it's kind of just a thing, the notion that you may when I say that, let's say if you are a spacefaring species traveling from world to world for any number of reasons, too numerous to list, from completely helpful to totally not helpful, would be why you would want to extract DNA from something local and create a hybrid. The number one sort of reason is as a go-between. Now, but again, that's neutrality. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing depends on all kinds of motives and everything else. But, the number one reason is to have a go-between that can communicate between the two species. But, depending on what that species needs or wants or what's thereafter and what that species may have, they may go, oh, they have a codon that we really like. Let's see if we can extract it and make a hybrid and make it useful to ourselves if that's really their thing. So my understanding is the majority of programs that we've been working on are sort of diplomacy programs, essentially, creating hybrids that are again, go-betweens between those species to help communicate and or to just create better, smarter, faster, stronger people, upgrading sort of genetics. So I would call it one of my weakest fields. I mean, I know about a little bit about everything, but it's sort of my weakest field, and so it's not really my area to know what all the DNA and genetic programs are. But there's a lot, and I know that over the decades you could sort of rely on the fact that if somebody had a theory and they wanted to test it, and they wanted to test it in the lab. There was a black budget program that was going to give them the money to do so. I don't think we're as bad as that anymore, but until they close down Plum Island, at the very least, we still know that there are Franken-science kind of experiments that do occur that we, as an organization, United States Marine Corps Special Section, strongly disapproves, and we shake our finger waggily at those who participate in unethical scientific programs. But at the moment, we can't go after every single one. But believe me, part of our process is pursuing criminality within those programs, and so we may not be pursuing a case on them this minute, but if they continue to do what they're doing, eventually we will. Right. So yeah, that's all I can really probably say is a lot of general stuff.
So on the base of Jupiter, because you were talking about the base of Jupiter in our last interview, you were saying that there's quite a lot of hybrids that you were talking to, kind of like human hybrids or different.
Well, I would say a lot of different species. Period. So and sometimes hybrids that again help the communication process. A lot of what I would say would be the diplomatic corps that works there of translators does comprise of a lot of hybrids and a lot of psionic persons who are quite good at translation. Also, master linguists who, speak thousands of languages and so forth, and plus technological translators and so forth. It's a pretty fascinating process, and there's as many different ways that you can figure out to communicate and translate with someone they've got. So there's half a dozen or so different means depending on who you're talking to and what their psionic ability is or is not, and whether you need someone to psionically translate, verbally translate, you can put on psionic amplifiers and talk to each other that way, or whether you can use an automatic translator, whether there's people to provide as translators, or whether you can speak a common language. I mean, there are a number of species who've been doing trade with us long enough that they speak English, or a few other Earth languages. Their brains have the ability to do that, but it really just depends. So there's a lot of different ways that you can communicate with people. So sometimes hybrids.
So with these trade exchanges, have there been like children that have been there, or is it mostly just an adults-only kind of trade thing?
I have never seen a child on that space station in a diplomatic event ever. It's always grown adults.
It's a no-no. It's a no-no. It's always adults. I mean, I was hybridized quite a bit in the SSP. They gave me different kinds of genetics from different humanoid-looking T species so I could do the linguistic stuff. You gain certain abilities when you're hybridized. You can get infusions of genetic DNA stock from different ETs temporarily put into your body, so you can actually look like the ET that you're having the meeting with, and you can also have some of their abilities to speak their language. It's like cellular memory that's genetically encoded on the hybrid print of what you're getting from their DNA to you. It could be temporary or it could be permanent. I was switched out all the time with different hybrid DNA, depending on...
Yeah, I was about to ask you, Elena, like what your experiences are with the hybrid programs.
That's my experience for the linguistics. I was a linguistics person for a number of years. That's one of the jobs that I did. And I was required to look like different humanoid ET species quite a bit, to change physically, like my appearance to change, to look more like them, to be more acceptable to them during these talks, negotiations, trades, whatever. And once I was hybridized, I had their language, like the language was automatically imprinted on my brain for the time that I had that genetic encoding from that ET species as part of the hybrid, semi-hybrid program. There's a certain limit. I said, I don't want to look like some species that's not humanoid. Like, I wouldn't want to look like a mantid. So I had certain limits of how far I wanted to be changed.
Yeah,
I certainly don't want to look like a 7-foot reptilian because that's out of my comfort zone.
I would say so.
I would accept only ET humanoid-like species. I don't mind having my skin be blue or having stripes or whatever, or having different colored hair or eyes or being 8 feet tall. I just don't want to be stuck with a tail and wings. Right. So there was a limit to how far I would be changed, how far I would, go into looking like some other ET species.
So these are basically like serum injections. They would inject you, and then basically the effects would start coming in. Like, how long do you have to wait in between these effects to take?
About 2 hours, and it's done. You look like
So you're kind of
somebody
just like
else.
looking at yourself in the mirror, maybe seeing yourself turn blue, maybe you're seeing your height starting to increase.
Yes, 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 it could genetically be done. It's how far advanced it is in these hybridization programs. And they certainly, other ET species have hybridized children programs where some humans have volunteered to have hybrid children,
So kind of like a
actually.
Yael in that sense with
Yes,
hybrid children.
yes, exactly, like the Girk-Fit-Near Alliance,
Right.
where it's Arcturians, the Yael, the Pleiadians. So they have these hybridization programs to help improve the human species as a race. And once you're in this hybridized program, it helps to cure diseases as well. If it's mixed with children, hybridized children, you can basically make a better race of humans. You fix diseases, you fix genetic imperfections. That's what hybrid programs basically do.
Very interesting. Very
That's
interesting.
how it works, yeah.
Let's look into the solar system in regards to kind of like artificial structures. Now, Randy, you've talked to me about a base that exists in Jupiter. Are there other particular artificial structures, like other bases that are maybe orbiting moons or orbiting planets within our star system that you guys are aware of?
All over. I mean, I don't have a list, but I mean, we have bases and orbiting platforms and satellite bases and ground bases all over the place.
So they all just like particular colonies, or are they monitoring stations?
I'd say most of them are monitoring stations, science stations. There's not a lot of colonial development. We don't have a lot of colonies in the solar system. I might be only aware of one other colony that we have, other than the Mars colonies, that I wouldn't be at liberty to speak about. But other than that, it would all just be military bases, listening posts, astrometric satellite stations, and I mean things. I mean, you get far enough out in the solar system. Believe me, you get really better pictures of the galaxy and so forth with your astrometrics and so forth than you do from Earth or from closer to the sun. The farther away you get from the sun, the better images you get, the less light bleed and so forth. So, but it's mostly military.
How far did Radiant Guardian go? Did they go all the way out like to the Oort cloud?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. All the way to the Oort cloud. Absolutely. That's basically the perimeter, because at the Oort cloud is where you get to the winds change. There is a field there. So really that's the limit. Anything outside of that is outside the yard. Anything that comes inside that is inside the yard. And if they don't have permission, we bark at them and tell them to go. Get out of the yard.
So are there other planets that are kind of orbiting in the Oort cloud? There's a lot of theories about other planets.
I can't say like for sure how many, but I would say that we're certain there are what we would call a few dark planets floating around there. So meaning that they're just dark, dead, lifeless rocks floating out there doing nothing, which actually will make perfect locations for space mining. Really, I mean, because to be honest, a dead planet floating out in the Oort cloud, you can cut down to the very last pebble without any karmic damage. That's a dead planet. You're not killing a planet that's already dead. We can cut up every last rock of one of those and haul it away. So, I mean, basically, one planet, dead planet floating out in the Oort cloud, could be space mining for 2,000 years or longer. I mean, while we chop that thing up.
Wow. So with Solar Warden basically has from Mercury to about Jupiter, and then Radiant Guardian takes care of the rest? Or?
Yeah, we're the outer ring mostly. Yeah, the outer system. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Elena, how about you? What kind of do you know of any artificial structures that are?
Oh yes, the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, who plays a little outside of the rules of Solar Warden and Radiant Guardian. 50 years ago, that famous lovely Tabby star, that megastructure that everybody's talking about? They have solar energy collectors over there by Tabby star, and they're collecting energy to build their lovely spaceships, advanced spaceships. So that's, ICC has their megastructure, the energy collector out there. They build it.
That is an ICC invention.
Yes, it is. It's called the Halo Project, ironically. And from another video game disclosure.
From Halo, right?
Yes, Halo. It's what it says. It says Halo on it, on the energy collector. And it's almost like a spaceship, actually. It has a robotics room. It has an engineering room. They mostly remotely control it and monitor the energy collection, but they can dock to it and go into the engineering and check on stuff. They can even move the thing to another star, another solar system. That's how advanced that technology is, and it basically collects energy from stars to build advanced spaceships and fusion technology weaponry as well to destroy other planets or cities.
Wow.
That's what it
Did they
does.
get help? Did they get help from ETs to build this?
Yeah, they've traded some stuff to get that, to get the blueprints for this technology to build it up, to reverse engineer it and make it better for their own purposes. So they've
So this
certainly,
structure can actually move. It can actually go into
yes,
orbits and.
yes, it could go into orbits around planets and disrupt weather as well. It could do a number of things.
Wow.
It's basically a solar energy collector machine that goes orbits around the star, and at certain points it collects solar energy from the star, and then it stops for a while, so you don't see the discrepancies of the light.
So it's
And
kind of like Star Killer Base in the new Force
yes,
Awakens. They basically
yes,
collect sunlight and then they start using it to destroy planets. Right?
yes, or build, ships or weapons, but they have to be very careful about the dimming factor because the telescope picked up on the dimming. Normal telescopes picked up on it, so they have to be a little more careful how much energy they've been collecting too much energy because it's been noticed.
Wow.
So it's one of those things they have to be very careful of because it's made the news, literally made the news.
Yeah.
So,
I've seen. Yeah, I saw those pictures, and I had to say, like, wow, that's sloppy. Somebody letting them see, sticking a straw in the sun,
Yeah.
getting a drink out of it. I thought that was pretty bold.
I think maybe it's kind of funny. Maybe NASA doesn't even realize about all the kind of toys that are out there, and they're like, "Oh, what's this? Maybe this is a black hole. Oh, wait, no, it's a megastructure."
Yeah, no, yeah, they don't for sure. And when they do find things out, again, they get infuriated. What else are we gonna find? I mean, so their research and development is just as eager to develop, these new technologies and these new space technologies and propulsion technologies because they're just as eager to get a real space program going as anybody else. Really, truly, they are quite tired of being the curtain show.
And they're certainly fed up with the ICC and the SSPs that they have a lot of cloaked space stations, like new lovely space stations, huge. That's another video that I did on the ICC and the SSPs. They have a lot of huge space stations that are amazing. They're 3-deckers as big as planets, and what is NASA stuck with? The International Space Station.
Little
That's so small.
Little tin can space shuttles.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah.
Well, NASA has its own plan.
Tin cans held together by Scotch tape and peanut butter.
Exactly. Well, NASA has its own little plans by 2027 to have a double-decker out. It's a competition. They're fighting for resources. NASA is really fighting for resources. It really
puzzles me. Like, how can NASA be so stupid as not to work on anti-gravitic technology?
They're not stupid.
They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. Yeah,
not
it's
allowed
the same reason Elon Musk is still working on rockets because he's not allowed to. It's just, essentially it's still protected defense contracting, top secret technology that you're not allowed to steal or work on. So
it's stuff like Skunk Works or Lockheed Martin that's basically making like these anti-gravitic things. You just think that there would be something.
Yeah. I mean, let me just say that. If there was a path that one wanted to take to get that technology from a military state to a civilian state, and there were a path to that, and you needed to talk to some of those people to talk about a path to that, then that would be a strategy that people would be working on and probably not talking too much about because it would be a project under wraps that you wouldn't necessarily want to know the people you were negotiating that. So I'm just saying, if you were to want to negotiate a way to get that technology from a military state to a commercial state, there would be and is a process for that. But if we were engaged in that conversation, then there just wouldn't be anything I could say about that.
Right. But there's also SpaceX that's coming together. There's Virgin that's looking to make all this stuff. So
they absolutely have made a huge sort of landmark by being able to remote control land a rocket on a remote controlled platform floating out on the ocean.
They're making NASA look like an idiot, right?
No, it's actually not. I wouldn't say that because NASA really would love for SpaceX to have the commercial flow of space traffic. NASA does not want to be responsible for shuttle trips getting everybody back and forth. They want to work on real stuff. And so right now we contract the Russians basically because Soyuz is the cheapest vehicle to get up, back, and forth. Pretty much anybody who wants to contract getting something up and back and forth into space contracts the Russians to use a Soyuz. Even ESA, the European Space Administration, contracts and uses Soyuz craft. But basically what Elon Musk has done is create the Dragon rocket and a recapturing remote controlled system which can make it less cheaper to use his rocket than it is a Soyuz. So in the world of commercial space exploration, he just created a commercial rocket that can run cheaper than so far the cheapest rocket that we're flying things up for, creating an absolute open door for a marketplace to be the company that ferries things and people back and forth into space. That's like the start of space-based industry. So NASA would very much like him to have that job, so they don't have to have that job. Let it be someone else's responsibility. Let it be someone else's deal, which he's very dedicated and taking all of his own, billions of dollars to make it happen, because he's wants to
Right.
get into space that bad. So
But do either of you feel that part of the disclosure that's coming up is to reveal anti-gravitic technology? And if that happens, is there an agency that may say, you know what, we'll just work with anti-gravitics. We won't even worry about rockets or anything like that. We'll just do anti-gravitics, and maybe we'll start an agency in that way.
yeah, like I said, if there was any conversation that we were engaged in that process, I wouldn't be able to say anything about it.
Well, hypothetically speaking, if something like that came out, NASA would be the head runner to start working with this technology. NASA covers up people's mistakes right now with what's going on out in space, all of these ET ships docking, undocking from the space stations. NASA's a cover up front to make sure it sweeps everything under the rug so people don't see what's going on in space. It's a front for the government to cover up what's going on with the SSPs. NASA knows about certain programs, lower SSPs programs, so it covers up certain things. So, of course, if this was to happen theoretically, right, with disclosure, NASA would get first dibs on this tech because they need everything upgraded anyway. They're working with old technology, space rockets, old telescopes. The telescopes are beyond amazing. Like the SSPs have telescopes that could see way beyond the Oort cloud. They've settled a lot of planets outside of our solar system. There are bases and colonies already on planets that have oxygen, that have an atmosphere, that are Earth-like planets. They have bases and colonies on those outside of our solar system. So to the SSPs, this is nothing new. Yep. And NASA knows that there are certain things already. So of course they get this tech. It wouldn't be the latest tech, but it would be better than what they have. So theoretically, I would say yes.
Okay. All right, guys, we're going to move on to Mars now, because Mars, again, is always a very exciting topic. So, Randy, again, you've been telling me a lot about your experiences with the base in the mountains as well, too, like up in the north as well, too. Now, why is it that, we all wanted to go to Mars? Was there just a feeling that something happened maybe back in the 60s or 70s that, oh, my goodness, there is life on Mars, and we're going to start creating these expeditions to go there? Like, what was the entire agenda, so to speak, relating to creating bases on Mars and making this happen?
Oh, I would say that just from the data that we were able to collect historically, I mean, you want to talk about just the things that, the first astronomers were able to see with their telescopes and so forth, and that started to change what we thought may or may not be there. And then all it took, was a couple of conversations with extraterrestrial species about Mars being a sister planet that made it incredibly interesting that we needed to find out what was going on there. And it was obviously first of all, once we knew that there was probably life there, we absolutely wanted to get there and find out whether it was something that was going to be our friend or our foe. That's always the goal of a military organization, first front. If you don't know, if there's someone out there you haven't met yet, the first thing you want to find out is, are they friend or foe? And, are they going to be someone you can hang out with? Or are they someone you got to protect China from and your silver when they come over? And so getting there was a priority just for tactical reasons to understand, is this friendly, foe? What do we have to worry about here? And mostly what we found out when we got there is that everyone was there had absolutely no interest whatsoever in what was going on over here. They really just could care less about what is happening here on planet Earth. I have no interest. Just none. It's almost hurts your feelings a little bit. Like, hey, didn't you guys care what we're doing over here? And they're just like, no, actually, we don't.
We couldn't give a crap.
We got our own problems to deal with. We got our own terraforming thing we're sorting out. We're still cleaning up a mess over here from a party we had a few millennia ago. So
they don't really care about what organization you're coming from. They don't care about your agencies. They don't care about
not really.
You're from Earth. That's about it, right?
Yeah, they really could care less. Now there is certainly, as we've had better diplomatic negotiations with them over time, those things start to matter a little more, so that if they do have contact with someone, they're going to want to know, okay, well, who are you with? And because that matters if they have diplomatic contact with us, to identify who someone is and whether it's someone they want to talk to or have clearance to talk to, et cetera, et cetera. They respect our rules and laws that way. So, at that point, it can be something that they're interested in because it's diplomatic and therefore has rules and protocols. But essentially, if you want to get down and tell them your life story or how things are going on Earth, unless they just have an individual curiosity, they otherwise just don't care. But there certainly is those who have more of an individual curiosity, just like on planet Earth, those who care and want to know about what's happening out there in space, and those who are just like, I don't care what's going on out in space. I'm busy right here. So, they're the same way. So I found that experience with the mantids and the reptoids there, that some of them were very interested in what's going on elsewhere, and others don't care at all. They got a job to do, and that's all they care about.
That's the thing as well too. Like, what started this whole kind of aggression? Like, you guys were just kind of coming on Mars, you're creating these bases, and then basically the locals were coming in and saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? And this kind of led to like an aggressive assault.
Well, because it's something, basically because it's a fight that started way before I got there, I can only tell you what I understand about how it sort of started, which is that we observed a situation in which there was already what we would have considered classical ground combat that was taking place between these two species in the north, and possibly between the other folks, and definitely the reptoids in the south. Essentially, that what we would call classical ground combat was a thing that they were kind of into. They did it a lot, and so
kind of like a war game, basically playing a war game.
I mean, it was certainly a behavior enough for us to question, from what we were observing, how this is something we would recognize as behavior that comes from the Middle Ages, or comes from, Greco-Roman times. And so the first question you want to ask is, where are these people at? Are they at a similar point where we were then, or is this something that they're doing now because they prefer it, which is really what it kind of turns out to be. They sort of shun the advanced technology because they feel that it's cheating, it's not fair. Fighting someone face to face with a hand-to-hand weapon is, how it's meant to be, and karma and truth.
The gladiatorial days, right?
Well, they even on a deeper level than that, they believe that you fight to truth, that karma and the planet decides who's right and who's true if you have a fair fight, that a fair fight decides what's actually true and right. In a similar way that we have our might is right kind of here. I'm not saying it's always correct, but it is part of their way of being. So we observed that, and certainly were curious about how that all was interacting, and then anticipated that if we were going to get close to it, that we'd get involved with it. And then all I can really say to that is it became an incredibly convenient way to have a non-stop testing zone to test military hardware and technology ad nauseum, because you're essentially interjecting yourself into a situation of ground combat that's just always sort of back and forth between people that you interject and sort of go back and forth and just become another character on the ground engaging in ground combat with everybody. And as long as we basically followed the rules, then they would fight within what was the fair fight boundary. But if we stepped outside the rules, they would step up a little bit of hey, that's not fair, so I'm going to blow that thing up on your head psionically. That's not fair. I'm going to blow that up for you.
Or they could engineer like thousands of insects and basically.
That's a different kind of strategy in combat, and what is considered fair and respectful. But with the reptiles, there's definitely a serious code, and what's right and what's wrong, and what's ethical and what's not ethical. And the more we conform to that, the more it was just about a straight fight on the ground, and the more we deviated from that, the more that they would, step up and go, oh yeah, we have bigger muscles we can flex if you want to fight like that. And then I think I may or may not have talked about it much ever in interviews before, but I think I may have once or twice. There was one, well, I won't say one time, the first time that we observed a draconian dropship come into a battlefield scenario, and the indigenous reptoids turn on them, turn their attention towards them and move towards them, and essentially engage in a style of combat that was unlike anything that we had ever engaged with them before, unlike we'd ever seen them do before. And I would say within 2 minutes, that entire dropship and everything that was on it was dead, crushed to rubble and particles, and the entire ship was brought down to the ground and shattered into a million pieces within 2 minutes. I mean, it was the fastest thing I'd ever seen, and it was just back and forth, and they were mowing the lawn, and I was like, oh my God, what is happening here? And then we all took a step back as the ship came down and parts started to flow everywhere, and then they just walked off and they were done for the day. And the insects walked off and they were done for the day, and we waited for our commanders to tell us, okay, go home, we're done.
So this is interesting that the reptilians would not be greeting like the Draco, right? Just
well,
no,
the Draco.
They hate them with a passion, and they consider them to be an invading enemy that they will destroy unto dust.
Right for them too, because the Draco often want your technology. They often want you to eat you or to enslave you, blah blah blah. So these guys just responded with, "Hey, this is our territory. You come to our territory without asking permission. This is what we send back, your dead ship, because we do not want you interfering with us, enslaving us, taking us over, infesting us with nanonites, nanobots." Because what often happens when the Draco get involved and enslave somebody or take over some territory, first thing they do is infest you with stuff, with nanobots, AI, so you're compliant with their agenda. That's the first thing that happens. And I've had nanobots infested into me by Dracos.
Yep, I remember
that I've been getting rid of, like, slowly, and it's hard because these damn things replicate. So you're going to defend yourself. If it's a bad Draco, you're going to defend yourself against them because you don't want these guys crawling all over you and yours. You just don't. That's why combative defensive maneuvers are taken to send a message. You come to us, we bring you down so you don't come again. Because that's what's going to happen if the Draco come. Nobody wants the Draco here.
Exactly.
Nobody.
Yeah.
No more.
So that's something that you've experienced as well too, Elena, like just being able to see like big Draco ships coming over and everybody's just like opening fire on them. And
yeah. The Draco actually took advantage when Mars was on the brink of its destruction from Maldek's explosion. The Draco really wanted to take advantage. And everybody was just, when I was on Mars in that lifetime, everybody was scrambling to shoot them down as much as possible. Because Mars was in its own chaos at that time. This was about 400 years ago when I had my lifetime on there, and all the spaceports were still open. Because there's huge spaceports everywhere. A lot of trading. Mars was like the trade hub. So they were shooting as much Draco down as they could to preserve what was left of their society, what was left on the surface. Underground, yeah.
Interesting. Now, Randy, did you have quite a few altercations with the Draco ships as well that you had to engage with as well?
It was something that I would say probably for the first 4, not quite 5 years that I was there. They didn't really show up, and then they started to show up and became a concern, and then I would say within a pretty short period of time, within that year, it became clear that when they showed up, it was, we would basically band together and attack them. And then the more and more their efforts became sort of serious, the more we kind of entered into this cooperative effort, which really is what led to the ending of, cessation of hostilities and ending the war and so forth, was essentially coming to a place of working with them to get rid of a common enemy, which basically just, let everybody bury the hatchet, so to speak. And I don't know what the state of I can tell you that if they wanted to continue testing military technology, the southern tribes are still very hostile, have no intention of making friends with anybody. They have a very, very, very simple attitude, which is you are either worthy to fight or you are worthy to eat. And so if you're not worthy to fight, then you will be eaten. And so, if you wanted a hostile group to test your military technology on, they're always going to be hostile. So, they probably just as well move, their testing grounds down there. But whatever was going on up north, we eventually had a peace agreement and everyone made friends, and, it all kind of ended.
So if someone was to see a Draco ship, what would they see? What does it look like?
Teardropped. Some of it is teardropped. Some of it is very angular and squarish looking.
Randy, is that what you saw?
I've seen a few different designs. I mean, they tend to be sort of blackish green,
Yes.
kind of like a classic sci-fi, evil ship, it's kind of that sort of, they're creepy looking.
So basically, all this teardrop, or are they kind of like angled ships? Like
I've seen the drop ships do tend to be a little tend to be like a wide teardrop, but I've also seen ships that were like polygon shaped. I mean, they were oddly angular polygon shaped, which was peculiar. I don't know what else to call them, but peculiar. But yeah, none of them. The only other thing that I can say about them is that in the weirdest sense, everything seemed to kind of ooze evil. I mean, I don't ever like to sort of use weird airy-fairy words like that. Like,
well, that's for the lack of a better term.
But all I can say is when you're looking at their technology, and as they sort of disembark off the ship, I mean, you really can just see this sort of collective dark evil that just sort of comes off of them, and it's just kind of creepy. You're instantaneously like, I don't want that to touch me, and yeah, you're instantaneously sort of disturbed and bothered by it, and you either want to run away or stomp on it, and it's a very it's a very bizarre sort of thing, and I'm sure it has a lot to do with their psionic makeup, but yeah.
Yeah, and they were in our neck of the woods, Brad, in last December.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had one of their ships on its way to destroy something. They were traveling underwater near Victoria, and
I remember you saying that, yeah.
One of the ET Alliances just destroyed
one of the Andromedan ships, right?
The Andromedan, yeah, just one of the Alliances. They just basically, and I was warned 3 weeks before it was coming down. I was in one of my Super Federation meetings.
There's a lot of activity around Antarctica right now.
Yes.
Pertaining to Dracos and ships that are trying to fight them off.
Yeah, and these guys are trying to destroy a lot of the Earth portals, the natural portals. That's what last December, that's what it was all about. And it was actually tear-shaped, sort of as greenish-purple, like Randy described. And only 3 life pods escaped, and they were green. They were kind of circular teardrop shaped, and they're creepy, and there was like almost 2-3 different types of species on the ship.
Yeah, they have like a genetic hierarchy caste system, and so they have like a worker podling, kind of a little worker caste, and they have a warrior class, and then they have a
royalty
class. Yeah.
They had one creepy Cabal guy who was genetically modified. He looked ET. He was creepy looking. So there's some Cabal with them on that ship, human Cabal. It was on its way to destroy something that was important in the Rockies, and it was going to slipstream through the portal and make its way somewhere else. But it was destroyed when it was underwater. To me, it felt like a boom, like destruction. It didn't feel like an earthquake, and I still, to this day, I say it was not an earthquake because it didn't feel like a normal earthquake would in BC. So
yeah, it feels like there's a lot of attention being brought into Antarctica right now. Do you guys have intel about what's happening in Antarctica? Because it feels like there's a lot of attention being brought over to Antarctica right now.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, it's busy. It's a busy hot zone at the moment. There's really not much I can comment about other than it's a hot spot.
Right. So there's a lot of buried technology and
yes, I can.
There's a lot that's melting and starting to be seen through the surface because the ice is sort of clearing off the top of it. So it's getting weird.
One of the bases in Antarctica is putting out a little too much energy, and the ice is melting. The base is under the water, and the ice is melting because the base is putting out too much energy. There, in Antarctica, there was a lot of Atlantis bases that are buried under the ice. And those guys are still exploring that tech, all that, those psionic chairs that are there where you can, sit in it, just put your hand on the chair and energetically activates, and you can end up in another country. If you think about it, you connect with the chair, you end up in another country, or you're able to see the future. Of course they'd want that tech. That tech is still there. And certain portions of Antarctica have been off limits to the SSBs and the Earth Alliance, but now a lot of them are coming in there to do the research, to do the study, to activate that tech, because they want more and more and more, and that tech is still there. And those pyramid cities, those bases are still there. So, and the Nazi bases are there too. They were the first ones to colonize Antarctica. So the more it melts, the more frontage you see what's really there.
Right.
There's even a no-fly zone. Normal planes can't fly over those areas.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, there's the opening in the southern pole, right?
Yes,
so
there is.
Why there's a no-fly zone.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the inner Earth, guys, because again, this is something that's really kind of getting strange. Is that there's a really large movement that still feel the Earth is flat. And I get this so much about, Brad, you're going to talk to journalists about how the Earth is flat. Like, you better tell that the Earth is flat, or else I'm going to get mad. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, guys. You want me to reveal truth? I said, I'm sorry, the Earth isn't flat, guys. That's just
not flat.
Not at all. It has its flat plains and stuff on portions of land, but the Earth itself is not flat at all. It's sphere.
It's kind of globby shaped, like if you took a basketball and slightly deflated it, and like really in space, it's kind of like this globby, kind of half deflated ball. Like it's not like a perfect round sphere.
No.
In fact, a lot of in that way.
Yeah, a lot of some of the discrepancies people are talking about for like it being flat. Well, then if it was round, it should be like this, and it's like, well, I mean, if it were perfectly a round curve, but because that curve is actually this blobby curve that's not round and is kind of not flat and kind of not curved, right? That math, there's a difference between the perfect geometry in theory and how it actually works on a not smooth level surface, is what the planet actually is. So a lot of the discrepancies people are talking about are just the discrepancies of not having actually living on a Pythagorean ball, on a Pythagorean sphere. It's not that. It's globby, half deflated kind of ball shape. So, but it's definitely roundish and spherish and not flattish at all.
That's why Jonas always says it is a round Earth. You are living on a round Earth.
That's very true when you're looking out from a ship, out from space on the planet, because most planets have rocky bits and pieces and islands, So it's not a perfect sphere, but as close as it can get to it, that's what it is. The more continents you have, the more rocky-ish it will look.
So it may be a lot with the gravitation as well, like how the gravitation affects the planet as well. It may create some type of small, truncated deflation in the idea of looking at it as a type of
yes, exactly.
Some of it is also the actual curvature and shape of the bottom of the oceans, which are actually the surface of the Earth, but because it's covered in water, we don't think of it as the surface. It ends up rounded out by this ocean on top of it, but actually some of those plateaus and plains are deeply, wobbly and up and down, and create these incredible variations that are just not round. I mean, if you think about, you're up here and you want to get to here. If there was no water, you'd actually have to go down, then up, to get from Washington, D.C. to Europe. If there was no water there and everything was car and train travel by that land, you would have to take this amazing trip down, into the Atlantic Trench and back up again. That would be traveling across the planet if there was no water there. So it's incredibly uneven when you think about that as the surface. But it's also, it's this thin, it's this thick of the surface layer. That huge variation is still in this teeny thinness of the layer. So it's still very, very, very round, but it's going to have plenty of imperfections when you're doing math. And why isn't this perfect? And it's like, well, it's an imperfect, sphere.
It's
And
it's
how about the inside of the planet? Are we looking at a hollow
Honeycomb.
planet?
Honeycomb.
honeycombed. Yes, been there.
Yeah.
Talked to the Gartha network
So let's
and
describe this
Shara.
honeycomb, but how it works. Like if we were to go inside the planet, are we just seeing vaults? Are we seeing clusters of different types of compartments as it relates to kind of like the honeycomb of the Earth? Or?
I'd say that between sort of, between the 0 to about 10 miles down is sort of your main area of pockets, and you can have little pockets, you can have big pockets, you can have pockets that are the size of counties and states and, half the size of the continental United States or something, but you can also have a pocket that's, pretty small. So the variation of those pockets depends on millions of years of volcanic and water flowing in and out and so forth, and gravity, and some digging, some burrowing by those inside too. We have an indigenous insectoid and reptoid species that have been down there, tunneling and burrowing. If you ever seen what an ant mound or a real good termite, nest looks like, they're absolutely amazing works of diggery and tunneling, and create these massive pockets to scale for how big.
So kind of like big bulges that are kind of sticking out there, like the inner of the Earth, like just seeing these big gigantic bulges of pockets. Is that kind of how?
No, if you were to go down and start walking through it, you really would be like if you were going through this honeycomb, this sort of little pockets, big pockets, tunnels, solid rock. So you can kind of end up wandering from area to area. You can come up to large patches of solid rock, and well, I guess we're not getting there that way, and you have to follow an area and find a path that leads to another pocket, and there's water flows, underwater flows, stream flows, like lakes and rivers and oceans at different places. But it's also different, because it's just not uniform. It's a bunch of different honeycomb pocket sizes. There's different levels of water, temperature, depending on how developed they've decided to create sort of these internal fusion devices, these artificial suns and so forth, which all I have to say is it's bad observation. If someone entered into this massive pocket that was, so big that you couldn't see either end to the right or the left, and they'll see a large fusion device, miles away from them, go, oh my God, I'm in the middle. It's hollow. Look, there's a sun in the middle. That's just bad observation. You were in a tiny, tiny little pocket, because let's be honest, even if it was hollow and you were sitting on, like the inside of that, think about how far away you can see up that way. You wouldn't be able to see far enough in any direction to realize where you were.
Exactly.
So any notion that it's hollow and you could see all this or experience all this, it's just no. And not to mention that gravity makes it absolutely impossible, or we'd cave in on ourselves. So there is, at the very core, hot molten stuff, and then as we get out into these cooling layers and these deep layers, and I'm telling you, 10 miles is deep. Okay, I mean, what you would have to do to get 10 miles down, I mean, that's really deep and far. So when you start getting down into some of those pockets, I mean, if you're in a pocket that's 2 miles down, I can tell you we have bases that go 1.5 miles, 2 miles down. You're in a pocket that's 2 miles down, and that's just kind of scratching the surface. Like, you're not going to notice like atomic bombs pounding the surface of the Earth. Like, I mean, you would not even notice them 2 miles underground. You wouldn't even know that they were happening. So when you get that far underground, yeah, of course, they could really also care less mostly about what's happening up here. And on an individual basis, on a social basis, they don't want us to destroy the environment up here any more than we do necessarily. But in a lot of ways, the reason they don't interact with us for the most part is socially. They're just like, yeah, we're here, you're there, stinky monkeys, we don't want to.
How about the aurora borealis? Like when that happens, is there like a singularity in the center of the Earth that's basically creating that kind of effect?
I think that's just light refracting off of electromagnetism, like the scientists say the aurora borealis is. It's mostly just the light it's an intense magnetism, and the light reflection and refraction. Refracting light through that magnetism causes the shimmering color change. I think it's really just that.
So nothing really being involved in the inner Earth relating to.
Not that I mean, other than the spinning core and the field, that it's creating. Yeah,
so
but I don't think there's
field in that way. That's kind of lighting up in reflection in that way.
Yeah, it's the magnetic field.
As well, in the honeycombs, some areas are really cleared out for cities, because these breakaway inner Earth groups have cleared away. They have advanced tech, they've cleared away certain sections for cities, so it's really like round inside round or squarish. Like
Oh yeah.
when you clear off the top of the land on the surface to build stuff, like a field, they do the same inside, except they're clearing away rock instead of grass and trees. They're just clearing out rock to create these pockets for cities and stuff, and trading ports as well, because they have ships in and out all the time from ports, from cities. They have their man-made lakes as well, so you can have paradise inside. And
so this would be the Argothan network, basically, just interconnecting everything inside.
Yes, like 7 or 10 groups of them. But famed
so we have indigenous insectoids, we have indigenous reptilians, we have indigenous humans. We have all these different types.
Yes, but they stay far away from each other.
Yeah, they're not so unfriendly, but they're not too neighborly either. Yeah, they keep to themselves. They tend to keep to themselves.
Yeah.
And it feels like there's an interaction that's going to change all that, where they're eventually going to be coming forward to talk.
Well, and I think part of that has been this larger diplomatic process to get everybody talking, so that it's like, hey, we all have to take responsibility for our planet. We all have to sit at the table and talk about it. So I think in that sense, we've engaged everyone in that conversation who has a right to be at that table to have that conversation with us.
Exactly. Very good. All right, guys. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Elena. Yeah,
and it's all about disclosure. If the surface dwellers find out about ETs and get advanced technology, the ones that are underground, I mean, the more advanced you get on the surface, the more concerned the underground species get about what you're doing on the surface. It becomes a concern. So the more secrets that start coming out, the more disclosure. People know, okay, there's another civilization or 2 or 3 or 5 underground, so we can't keep on screwing the planet because there's other concerns out there, and these people are watching us, what we're doing. So we can't keep on destroying, holding these secrets forever. Everything comes out eventually.
Exactly. Yeah, you're right.
So all concerns are trying to be met, and a lot of stuff will come out into the public anyway. So it's addressing issues right now.
Exactly. Okay, guys, we're going to move on to Q&A. So again, thank you everybody for tuning into this. We got well over 100 viewers right now, so it's fantastic. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Q&A. So again, if you guys still have questions you want to share, just go ahead and click on the Q&A app, and you can type in your question, and you can post it here. So we have one question here from Divine Motives, and this is addressed to both of you. What should we be aware of in regards to our current North and South Pole shifting? Is this due to natural causes? Is anyone working to keep the poles from shifting?
Yes, we're absolutely trying to stabilize the magnetic pole so that it doesn't flip, because if it flips, most of the electronic stuff just stops working. So we're totally trying to keep that stabilized, and it should, after sort of these disruptive periods, re-enter into a stabilizing period. So it's kind of like, as long as we can kind of hold it from flipping long enough for it to restabilize, it should be fine. So it's not like we have to put this permanent clamp on it. It's more just like using this other magnetism to keep it from swinging, and then hopefully when it restabilizes, then we can take hands off of it and leave it like that for a while. So yes.
Okay. Elena?
And it's also stopping using CERN, stopping using HARP, all the weather modification stuff. It does have an effect on the poles shifting.
Yeah.
So the less you use of that stuff, the better the poles stay where they should stay, north and south, because it really can go wonky-turvy. Or if you try to create earthquakes where you're man-made earthquakes with this technology where you shouldn't be doing that to scare people, it can upset the pole shifts. And you'll have stuff melting, you'll have water rising. Those buoys are like, what the heck is going on here? The buoys are rising, there's going to be an earthquake. There's no water rising, no earthquake. Some kind of weather modification was used to disturb those natural sequences. So those have a lot to do with the pole shifting as well. The less of that you do, the more stable your planet is, basically. The poles stay stable.
Yeah,
it's very good. Okay, let's move on to another question here from Paula. Paula asks, does the plan still hold that large land masses will be eroded or flooded on the east coast of New York and lower southern coast, as well as divide much of the interior state and the west coasts, etc.? Please define the situation potential at this point.
No, I'm not aware of any such plan that's going to happen at this point, other than natural sort of water rising levels. Now we've done a pretty good job of like neutralizing what we consider these sort of spoil sport plans to kind of like, if I can't have it, nobody can, and then people trying to completely destabilize and destroy everything so they can try and rise out of the ashes. I think we've nipped most of that in the bud, so I'm not aware of any such plan at this point that would be going forward. No.
Well, it was interesting. I had an earthquake simulator show up at the university where I work to simulate a 9.0 earthquake. You get into the simulator and you're like, "Whoa," shaking up. And I'm like, oh, the cabal is at it again. They've been using their earthquake technology in certain countries. I'm like, not having this in my neck of the woods. No, thank you.
Yeah, it seems like there's a grassroots, I'm not really a grassroots, but there's like a different mixture of different organizations within the entire pie. Like one person wants to try and create an earthquake here, another one basically intervenes and stops them. Is that kind of the thing? Like just a lot of different organizations keeping their fingers in the pie, making sure.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a balance.
There's a lot more everyone keeping an eye on everyone else. So instead of people going, oh, I didn't see that, there's a lot more, hey, did you see what that guy was doing? So since there's just more of that, yeah, we're able to nip that stuff in the bud more instead of it just getting through.
Right now, it's a lot of those bases, top secret bases, being dismantled all over the U.S. so people don't go pressing the wrong buttons and doing weather modification where they're not supposed to be doing it. So these little earthquakes are felt on the surface because these bases are being dismantled and repurposed for other better things. So there's a lot of that going on. So people, like I said, don't go pressing buttons to activate certain laser beams that'll modify the weather and cause an earthquake.
Okay. Here's one from Rich Brown. He asks, on a military level, as humans, which include these space technologies, on a percentile, can we now hold our own against these warring ET factions?
Absolutely. I would say that there is no one at this point that represents a tangible military threat to the safety of planet Earth and the solar system. Not saying that someone couldn't make our day go bad and that we wouldn't have to fight them off or someone couldn't start a war with us, but there's nobody that we're aware of that can steamroll over us at this point.
Yeah, the SSPs have a lot of advanced ships technologies, and they've been doing this for 80-odd years or more even. Yeah. So no, a lot of advanced tech is out there. The planet is secretly being protected. A lot of us don't know about what's out there and what's protecting us, but it's being done. It's hush hush, but it's being done. And hey, somebody tries to pull off a fake invasion, you see holographic ships in the sky. That's all you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And it's going to be mundane and boring.
Or they'll be our friends and ships pretending to be invaders. I mean, there's not going to be a real invasion. It's just not militarily possible.
Or just have like a mass signing and then have all the media blow it completely out of proportion. Is this an invasion? Is this an invasion?
Possibly. And I will say that from a military point of view, a fake invasion isn't the worst thing ever. Like there is a way to make fake invasion work for us, and a way that it isn't about destabilizing and just creating like one world government or anything like that. There's absolute ways in which to work a fake invasion scenario to kind of get everybody on the same page. So there's a couple different ways you could take a scenario like that. And so I'm just saying, even if it does happen, don't panic like that it's the end of the world. It could be just a way to kind of like get everybody from attacking each other and attacking one person. And you kind of get it. Let me put it this way: you get everybody you get everyone stop being accustomed to fighting with each other, and you get them on a couple of years of being accustomed to fighting, them bugs or whatever, and that really does socially change how people see each other, how they interact, and how they feel they either have to compete or share with one another. So there is some notion that a psychological reset of just, let's get everybody to stop fighting with each other by fighting with that guy, then maybe that would actually be a good social thing for us. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it could still be worked out to a positive spin, but I don't know of any awareness or plan at this point to do any kind of like major invasion that destabilizes and takes over the government and we're all hiding in caves or something. No, I don't see anything like that. If anything, it's all going to be part of the show. It'll be very short-lived. It'll be as stagey and theatrical as anything else that they've done in the last few years. So people who are paying attention shouldn't be fooled too much by a fake invasion. But it's probably not in any way likely to be used for a negative purpose. If anything, it's just going to be, let's stop fighting with each other for 5 minutes and get that guy. And then, everyone can be, yeah, get that guy. And then, focus their attention on that guy instead of everybody else.
Exactly.
Or what they could do as part of like a little disclosure, it's humans pretending to be ETs. Hi, I'm from this planet. I'm from this planet. I'm ET. Come to
Yeah.
visit you, and it's a fake show basically.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well,
Let's put on disclosure.
there's a few different scenarios. Another one is like, hey, there's a bad ET is coming to get us. Oh, look, there's good ETs coming to save us. And then we have the friend come in and they fight off the bad guy. And, oh, we're your friend. And then we can have this whole relationship with our friend now because they came to save us from the bad guy. I mean, there's a number of ways that you can play out that scenario, and they all can either be spun toward a positive end or toward a negative end. So I think we're past the point of the people being in charge of that, of spinning it to a negative end. So
Right.
I feel like if that happened tomorrow, I would feel confident that it was going to go in the right direction.
Okay, good. Here's one from Serena. Serena asks, Randy and Elena, when disclosure is finally out there, where would you two rather be or live? Would you stay on Earth, or where would you like to live or stay?
I'll let you answer that one first if you want.
$64,000 question, I guess. Right?
I already travel where I want off the planet when I want. I've visited a lot of different ships with a lot of different ETs. Personally, I do see my soul going off world soon enough. There's going to be something that's coming up for me that I do see myself going off planet at some point and doing something else. Right now, this is the most interesting place to be during these next couple of months. I'm happy where I am in British Columbia because I'm trying to build a healing center and get all these healing technologies in and change the face of Langley, British Columbia. I'm trying to bring people together, healers, technology, all that stuff. So I'm in a project right now that I'm happy with and very challenged with. So I'm happy here for now, but I would love to go off planet and do something else as well when the time comes. If it's an appropriate offer that I like, I might just go and accept. It depends really what I'm offered and by who. You got to ask yourself, who makes the offer? How good is it? Is it worth doing or not?
Mm-hmm.
That's the best I can answer with that one.
Exactly. And Randy, how about you?
I have a job to do at the moment, and I don't see myself getting freed up from that job anytime soon or given permission to retire in the next few decades. So probably the job that we have to do here will keep me here for years, and then, before there's going to be time to maneuver or go somewhere else. But believe me when I say that it would be absolutely, the best way for me to retire in the world, to take my space RV and travel the galaxy, and go places that I would like to visit. But at the moment, I absolutely have so much work to do that there's nowhere I'm going but here for quite a while. So, and this is the most exciting place to be at the moment, and I think this is all going to work out very, very well. So I realize some people are stressed out and it's all looking crazy in some ways, but I think this is all going to be fun and work great in the end. So I wouldn't rather be anywhere else, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, me as well too. I just feel like I love what I'm doing. I love the West Coast. I'm in BC with Elena as well too, and I'm just absolutely loving everything I do. I know I'm going to be a busy guy. I'm going to be a busy guy for many years, so I'm happy exactly where I am right now.
West Coast is the best coast.
West Coast is the best coast, absolutely.
If some ETs do offer you work exchange, think about it, because that might come up, some work exchange to learn how to do things.
I'll commute.
Do things better, like improve things on the surface of the planet, because the inner Earth guys do know what they're doing, so they might be doing work exchange eventually with us surface dwellers, so that's something to consider, because that could be fun.
The invitation even to go to like inner Earth as well too and check things out.
Yes, to so if you're offered work exchange by a decent species, you might want to consider that because you can learn something new.
Like I said, I might just be a commuter though. We'll see.
One of the most important things that certainly happens when you open those ways for travel and that you want to have happen is to have people going back and forth, because you don't want people going, I heard about them Agarthans, they eat children. I mean, you want people who've come back and said, no, I've been there, it was great, it was fun. You want people to go back and forth so that you can have people telling people, no, it was fine, they don't eat babies, it's cool. Exactly. So that people don't make up something in their mind about someone. And the same thing about going to other planets. We'll be sending, groups of school teachers and administrators and public officials to come back and say, hey, we have this great idea for how to do better, municipal planning, based on something that they're doing over here. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very good. All right, we got a question here from Carolyn, and Carolyn asks, does anyone know where to find the list of the 22 genetic programs that make up the human being? Like, what are the names of the species, races involved? For example, are the Arcturians one of them?
One of them, but I don't know the whole list for sure. That's not my area.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of them. The Arcturians, the Pleiadians, Andromedans, the Elves, and the list goes on and on and on, or Garthans. There was a lot of them involved in all of this. You won't find a concrete list anywhere because that's classified info.
Yes.
You'll find snippets and bits of it.
Well, it's just kind of like looking at the moon. Like what Adronis has said is that when you look at the moon, you're looking at a laboratory, right? You're looking at something where there's these conglomerate of different beings, and they're all responsible, whoever's up there, to look down at the Earth and saying part of their genetic stock has been contributed. What Adronis has also told me is says, look into many of the ancient contacts that have happened throughout your civilization's history, and you'll get an idea about the type of genetics that are contained within your own genome as well. You even have beings from the future that have not even made contact with us yet,
right,
that are actually partially responsible for the genetics as well. So it's very classified with that info.
Yeah, it is, because it's a fun, interesting mix, and it gets pretty mind-blowing, yeah, when you talk about where it all comes from.
The reptilians did help. They contributed their genetic stock.
They helped. Well, and
are we talking about the Draco, or are we talking about the indigenous reptilian? Or
both? Both did it.
But there are other species of reptiles that I would consider neither those that are better behaved that have also helped contribute. So
yes,
it's speciesist to be anti-reptile. I'll just say that.
I'm not anti-reptile. Yeah, they did. All I'm saying that a number of different reptiles contributed to this genetic stuff, and dinosaur species as well. There's dinosaur species. Saurian species. So there's a number of different species that contributed. There's as well these new L beings that I've been talking to. They've contributed too. So many different ones, and the list is still classified is basically it.
Great. Well, let's look into the moon a bit, guys. What do you guys know about the moon? Because we have what's known as Lunar Operations Command. Have either of you been there?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, been there.
What is that all about? Like, is that like a space station, or is that like a little monitoring station on the moon, or what?
Big base, big multi-level, multi-layer base that has areas that were built back in the 50s. I mean, you can tell by the building materials, the metal construction, the sort of even like the cast metal parts on the locks and doors and airlocks and things, and carpet, wall, paint, all these building materials, lighting fixtures, doorways, lit signs over doorways and things that, half the time you feel like you're walking, through a really old military base that was built in the 40s or 50s and has all this old hardware still that hasn't been upgraded. I remember walking down to the administration section and noticing how ratty the carpet was. It was like from the 60s or the 70s, and they hadn't put new carpet down on the floor in decades, and it was just this ratty old yellow carpet that looked like, and even the chairs along the walls and stuff looked like they were from a doctor's office from 1972. So it's a weird conglomeration of areas and levels of stuff that was built way back. They haven't even bothered to upgrade the frickin' carpet, versus other areas which are so advanced that you'd think you just walked into the future. So you could literally go from one end to the other and feel like you walked through time from 1947 to 2035 based on what you're surrounded by and what everything looks like. It's a trip.
Wow.
It's a trip. All I could say is their labs are very advanced, and that's where I prefer to spend my time, and in the surveillance sections, which look pretty decent. All the hardware, like you have your surveillance, you have your Section 5, which is your monitoring surveillance part of the base, where you're gathering and collating all the data on astrometrics, on where everybody is based, what planet, what goes on where the ships are traveling back and forth. That's where I prefer to be, because I like to be near the advanced tech.
Is this on the dark side of the moon? Is that where the Lunar Operations Command is?
Yes, it is, because you don't want people seeing what's on the moon.
Right.
With a certain high-powered telescope, you can have a look what's there. Yes, it's where the shadow side is, so it's covered.
So
and some
it's
of it,
though, because a lot of the light side, you can actually see some stuff as well too. Just not.
There's actually a whole bunch of stuff within the last year that we've been able to see on the light side that they want us to see now. They've taken the cloaking shield off, and so now we can go, oh hey, how did that get there? So that's part of this, oh, look up there if you're looking, part of the disclosure aspect of stuff that we're learning about the moon. So while we were totally fixated on all these photographs coming back from Mars. There was a whole crapload of stuff that was being released about the moon last year that went by most people, including what I think is one of my favorites. The Chinese lunar lander landed, took a bunch of pictures, and NASA published a bunch of photos on its website. And one of the photos was picked out by people going, hey, what's that building over there? There's like a base or a structure. Did the Chinese build that? And then NASA had to admit, oh, oops, we're sorry. Our mistake. That wasn't a photo from the Chinese lunar lander. We accidentally somehow got a photo out of the old Apollo lander and accidentally got it into this other series of photographs. And so that's actually from the 1969 Apollo lander. Are bad. And I just thought that was the most hilarious thing in the world. Like, how in the world do you accidentally stumble your hand into an archive of pictures from 1969 and accidentally, which is an analog. It's not even digital. How in the world are you taking that analog photograph and transferring into a digital format accidentally? By accident, and then scanning it with those pictures. So they've been definitely trying to show us things about the moon all year long, and it's another part of the, oh, look what's there. So it's all in plain sight at the moment, and pretty soon I'm sure we'll hear more.
Or
so
with
Lunar Operations Command, are there other species that you worked with, like Elena with your labs? Were there other ETs?
They prefer not to have other species in LOC because half of the LOC is on the surface of the moon, half of it is underground. What's more underground, sometimes their species come in, but rarely. LOC likes to protect its territory because what's happening on the moon is that it's almost like a delegates meeting place. All kinds of species have bases on the moon. Humans have their LOC, others have other things, and it's all quite separated because it's almost like sacred ground. You don't fight on the moon too often.
It's a DMZ.
Yes, there's all kinds of sacred ruins there, advanced technology. So not very much on the LOC, no.
But there is a lot of different groups, like all these different groups that basically have a truce with each other, and so nobody attacks. There's even people that don't even like each other, but they're all just there and they have a truce.
Yeah, most of them have been there since before we were, so yeah.
That's true, and there's certain things where LOC staff and soldiers can't even land on the moon. It's quite restrictive in this is my territory, this is yours, unless you have special permission for this or that, you can't land there. Stay on your side and do your stuff. Focus in on what you're working in.
Pilots will often have to do weird zigzags to come in and land because they're not even allowed to fly over certain territories. It's considered, rude and hostile, and so sometimes pilots have to do this weird little, maneuvering act to come in and land.
So it's almost like an air traffic control nightmare at times.
Or you have
it can be interesting.
Or you have to hover to get permission to land. You're like waiting 10 minutes. Air control, like they land here, there, hover, just hover, anti-gravity on, hover before you're given permission to land. So, and NASA covers up a lot of that too. Whoops, there was something last year out about that triangular spaceship landing in one of the moon craters. And it was NASA captured the image and they, oh, that's some kind of a blob. That's not real.
Oops, not real. Yeah.
Some ship landed where it shouldn't have, and it was missed by accident. One of the ships landed where it shouldn't have landed, and it was missed by LOC, and it was photographed accidentally. And they were like, "Got to cover that up. Go away, go away." They were told to get off the moon because they had some nefarious purposes. They landed there.
What about, if we're moving past the moon now, what about world engines? Now, Randy, are you familiar with world engines? Because Elena has talked about world engines quite a bit. Are you familiar with them as well?
Define what that is. Maybe I am or maybe I'm not. I may not have heard it described that way.
Elena, did you want to share about world engines?
Sure. Some planetoids are man-made. Planets are made, and they have these crystalline generator engines that power the planetoid.
Sure.
So it's anti-gravity and fusion, and it spins, and it could travel in space, this planetoid. So the moon used to be like that, but its world engines were damaged, so it can't travel anymore. If you tractor beam it, you can rotate it elsewhere and put it elsewhere around a planet. So its world engines are damaged. That's in the core of the moon, right in the middle. So have you
Right.
heard of those things?
Yeah, no, sure, sure, sure. I mean, an artificial satellite, I mean, there's a number of different ways to make artificial satellites. And certainly you want to basically create a giant gyroscope in the middle of it that you can create, stabilize it, make it go the direction that you want to go it. Lateris, which is a moon of Saturn, is like the only other moon in our solar system which has quote unquote tidal lock, which is there's no tidal lock is a physical fallacy. There's really no such thing in the laws of physics as tidal lock. It's something we make up so that we don't wonder how come that moon doesn't move. Because the truth is the reason the moon doesn't move is because there's a gyroscope in the middle of it, keeping it at that space because somebody wanted it to be kept there, or because it was damaged and then is locked in that position. But most of the time, it's because they want it to be in that position. So you basically have of all our moons in the solar system, every single one of them rotates clockwise and spins except for 3. And those 3 are Lateris, Ganymede, and Luna. And basically, Lateris has a tidal lock like our Luna does, and so they don't move. So they're the stable ones that are locked in, which is why they're also artificial. But Lateris does rotate clockwise. The moon, Luna, goes counterclockwise, as does Ganymede. So that's kind of how we know what the 3 artificial moons in the solar system are, because they're the ones that don't do what everyone else does, which is spin around clockwise, going around the planet like that, because they all do that except those 3. And so that is an abnormal behavior for a celestial body that indicates that it's an artificial satellite or is placed or had some other event that keeps it in that position or has it spin the other way. Why they wanted Ganymede to spin the other way has something to do with their personal preference, but basically keeping the moon locked is so that nobody sees what's on the duck blind on the other side. And I don't know enough about Lateris to know why it's in a locked position.
So basically, these type of moons would basically have the world engines in them, and basically be able to
yeah, some kind of, if that's what you're calling it, a world engine in the middle of it that's keeping the gyroscope, so it tells you what direction it can go and how it can spin and so forth. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, Elena, you have experience in actually being in aeronautics as well too, because I think you said you were helping to build a lot of the space planes as well too.
Yes, I was.
So, Randy, you might want to talk to her. She has some info on space planes and stuff, right? So.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're using crystalline-based technology to power these engines in these advanced ships. It's quite interesting, as well as anti-grav and what Corey Good has been talking about. These engines become smaller and smaller every year as technology advances.
Yep.
So it's kind of like mini world engines being caught in these space planes.
Yes.
Huh,
yeah, exactly. And you can interact. The more advanced tech, you can just psionically interact with it, program the coordinates that it flies, and you don't even have to hold on to the joystick or stuff anymore.
Huh,
You just
wow,
you're just kind of, your hands are like this, and you use your mind to propel it to go where you want the ship.
Kind of like those thought chairs, like the chairs you would see in Stargate.
Yeah. The more advanced ships are like that, the scout ships. So it's very interesting. It's becoming Star Trek more and more and more.
Yeah, because Randy, you had kind of like the basic space plane where you had to get in there, and it was almost kind of like Star Wars.
I mean,
guess,
they're
like
a fighter. I mean, they're not shaped or built like that at all. But I mean, they're a fighter. They're a military craft. So they are specifically designed. Both the interface and the engine and so forth are designed for military purpose, and they're designed for operating as a group, operating as an air wing, operating under command and control from a flagship and so forth, from a carrier. So you're just going to have things that are more applicable to that purpose. And so basically everything about those vehicles is designed to make it a more efficient, fast, functional military vehicle for the pilot and everyone else concerned. So they're not necessarily going to be built the same way or use the same interfacing as a scout ship or as a larger ship, they're going to. And I know someone who was actually talking to me about one of the deep space vessels, which I didn't know too much about until he started telling me a bunch about that, which is also has a very different configuration as far as how they built that ship and what kind of interfacing and sort of what they wanted to make the bulkheads and so forth because of that purpose. You know, they wanted a long range ship that could basically take a beating from anything, survive anything, because it's going to be so far out there that there's going to be nobody that can come help it if it gets in distress. So it has a completely different internal, external design than anything I've ever seen. So things are built to their purpose. So that sounds perfectly acceptable for that purpose, and our fighters were built for that purpose. So we have what you call your casual interface, which is a palms down, which is there's little divots that your hands go into, and there's little finger controls and things that you can adjust. It's all very ergonomic to your fingertips that are at your side. But that's in a casual position. When you're in a combat position, you actually have a little ball that your hand fits into. There's little imprints on it that you hold into. That is this whole steering mechanism and flight mechanism that moves in all these XYZ directions, as well as having the seat gimbals and moves, and so you're actually shifting your weight in your hips and your hands, steering with your hands and your body as you're able to slide left, right, back, forward, and up and down. They are one of the most maneuverable vehicles ever. I mean, the way you can spin, the way you can flip around something in a curve, spin around and fire on it, and then immediately turn around and go the other direction. I mean, they slide out of the way. I mean, they're just the maneuverability of these vehicles and the speed at which they can maneuver and the directions at which they can maneuver is astonishing. So they're purposed for that, and everything about them is that.
And also the thought technology, like I was saying, that you could psionically control their ship. You're doing your fighting stuff, but you're also checking on something else that's going on psionically, like you're in tune with the ship.
Well, the HUD is basically a psionic HUD, and the essentially what you consider to be the your visual system, which allows you to see outside the ship and so forth, and sort of this 360-degree view, as if you didn't have as if you had no cockpit over your head. That's a psionic interface, but everything else was hands and body. They really, for the way we were trained in these vehicles, they wanted the pilots to have a fully responsive vehicle that the pilot could use every ability to turn their body in any direction to steer the vehicle. So it also has, you know, the inertial dampers, essentially, so you can, you know, move quickly left, right, and you don't feel anything. That's not how these work. These actually allow us to feel a certain amount of the movement left and right. So I can still accelerate that thing at 20, 30,000 miles a second to get up to full speed, but and I'm not going to hit the back of the wall like a pancake, but I will feel motion so that as a pilot I can be responsive to everything that the vehicle is doing. So it's a very customized design for the pilot to be able to fully physically interface with the steering mechanism, the piloting mechanism, so that they can have maximum maneuverability and response time, so that they literally measure your response times in milliseconds, you know, down to like tenths and hundredths of a millisecond, so that when they're testing, like, how fast can you hit that trigger, how fast can you make a turn, they're really calculating. No, I mean, he can be a few milliseconds faster on this. I mean, that is exactly how this thing was designed, so that different operations that you're performing are milliseconds faster than doing it another way, that you end up with this sort of conglomerate aggregate of time saving. So you end up shaving off half a seconds and milliseconds and seconds here and there that make your ability to maneuver and engage in combat one of the fastest, most maneuverable vehicles out there.
Wow.
And,
I'm sorry, I'm very proud of that, I guess.
Oh, no, of course, me too. And they're getting away from the plasma core technology for the generators of the ships, right? Because plasma is more volatile.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's why
we were using a newer 0-point generator that was a little black box that, yeah.
I remember being so frustrated when I had to design those stupid plasma engines. Because those things are more volatile and they are more likely to explode if you do something wrong.
Oh, wait,
So
yeah, you
it's,
definitely have to watch them when you redline. You can't redline them like you can these things, that's for sure. No,
no,
no, no, no. Yeah.
Here's
older,
a very
older
interesting
tech.
question. Very interesting question that just came up that I think is really interesting. One person asks, Andrew, his name, could you go more into depth about the Time Core, the group that travels forward and backward in time? Have you guys heard of them? The Time Core.
Sure, yeah.
Yep.
It's dangerous. It could destabilize your molecular structure if you do it too much, and it could really mess with your memories because when you're doing a lot of time travel, you could enter so many sequences. There's so many protocols where you can go and where you can't time travel
Hmm.
because basically you're not allowed to see the future because you can alter the future by seeing the future. So there's a lot of protocols where you can time travel and not, and there's buffers on the ships that prevent you from time traveling. That's for sure. There's anti-grav buffers, so you can't open wormholes or you can't open portals in space. You have to have certain missions and permissions to do that kind of stuff. It's very classified and very controlled in the programs, that's for sure.
Right.
I was lucky enough to have someone from Time Corps visit me last year and give me a briefing, and so we actually had a pretty lengthy conversation about their operations and what they do and everything. So I know way more than I can talk about them, but I will say this, that there is no such thing as unregulated time travel in this system at the moment. If you want to go somewhere, you absolutely have to schedule it through Time Corps. If you want to take people back and forth, you absolutely have to schedule it through Time Corps. If you think you're going to go do some time travel without their permission, 5 seconds before you hit the switch, a guy's going to appear and go, "Don't do that." And so you're just gonna they regulate that pretty tightly, but
So
they
they have
also
kind of like a temporal prime directive in that way. That
Yes.
Oh, absolutely, but they also have this, and they absolutely spend their days going up and down the time stream to nudge things in ways that they feel are moving towards a positive direction. In fact, I'll go a step further. Anyone who got to see Tomorrowland, which the Disney company came out with, and George Clooney was in it, right? If you've seen this movie, okay, that's Time Corps propaganda. Like, they straight up were like, "We need you guys to make this movie." They wrote that script and they produced that movie because they basically wanted people to think, yeah, if I actually think about a positive future, maybe I'll have one. Because what they really want to do is people start imagining this wonderful city of giant chromed buildings in the future where everything's green and perfect and we're all, fine, because that is what they're trying to nudge us towards. They literally are like nudge, 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 nudge along the time stream, people, events, so forth, so that we're getting more and more as we, instead of, if we leaning this way, they nudge it back that way. If we're off this way, they'll nudge it back this way, so that we're making that direction. And so that when we get there in about 2039, then they'll move their base up ahead again. Their base is basically in a bubble in 2039, and they just hang out there watching the time stream change every day. So every morning they get up and go, no, we got to do this again. Or they wake up and go, yay, it's perfect today. But as the time streams close, as we get closer to that, they just keep nudging events out of the way that are going to mess that up. And then when we get there, they can be, yay, we did our job. Now we get to move another 50 years in the future and do it again. And then they'll move another half a century into the future, and they will nudge and nudge to a destination. And so it really does. It put my mind, to be honest, quite a bit at ease, not knowing that the world is perfect, because it's not perfect, and not knowing that the world will be without conflict, because it won't be, and not knowing that there will not be disasters and people dying, because there will be, but knowing that there are some really, like, the smartest guys in the world who are managing that process and nudging us towards a positive future. Like, I believe that we all have to make our positive future, but believe me, if we didn't have a group of men and women who were dedicated to nudging us in that direction, it would be a lot harder. And I am so happy that we have them nudging us in that direction, making the process a lot easier for us. So
it kind of sounds like the phenomenon of John Teeter. where he came back and basically shared that information. Do you feel that maybe he was in relation to this type?
I don't know who that is, so
Me neither.
It was a 2000 phenomenon, like in the year 2000. Basically, this time traveler came on the forums of Art Bell and started talking about time machines and time travel and all that stuff. You guys should look it up.
I missed that. Yeah, no, I missed that. So
Yeah.
maybe.
So he was quite a phenomenon.
I don't need a time traveling machine. The Time Core looks at me quite a bit because I do some time traveling with my own psionic abilities. I just have peeks into the future, how things will look, how things will turn out. And I know I'm being monitored constantly because there are these people who can naturally time leap, as I call it, and look at bits of the future or go into the past.
Mm-hmm.
Time jumpers,
So, time jumpers.
That could be kind of like our future selves. Like our future selves will come back in that way and basically help us to orient our own life in a more positive direction as well, too.
Well, no, more like your current self is looking at what will happen to your future self, and you're kind of like, oh, I can align this to happen this way, so this positive thing actually works for me.
Yeah, but what I mean is that when people actually have these interactions with other particular beings that come into their life, a lot of them address themselves as being from the future. Like, I am you in this version of the future.
Right.
I've come back at this time to help you move in this way. Like, this is my own experience with the Drones in that example.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a psionic ability. Yeah,
Exactly.
psionic time travel is a psionic ability, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Okay.
It is. Like you, Brad, said, you saw Bernie Sanders winning in the future as president, and I saw Bernie Sanders winning in the future as president as well. We had two confirmations of what we saw.
Exactly. Psionics at work, right? It's great. Here's one from Cheyenne. Cheyenne asks, here's an interesting one. Could Saturn's rings be made of gold and other materials instead of the rocks that NASA shows? Is Saturn's rings being mined?
They're made up of, I mean, the rocks of Saturn are made up of a whole bunch of different kinds of minerals. So, I mean, I would imagine if you started plucking out, rocks from the rings of Saturn, you'd find all kinds of stuff in there. I would suggest that mining the rings of Saturn is a very dangerous venture. I would suggest that if we were going to engage in mining, we would be pulling asteroids or going to asteroids in the belt before we would try and pull things out of the rings of Saturn. Let's just say that there's a lot of objects moving real fast in a little stream. You want to get down there, you're going into a stream of flying rocks. So it just seems like it's more of a thing we wouldn't want to mine from that place. Not to mention you might mess up the rings and it wouldn't look as pretty. So I think for safety reasons and other reasons, the asteroid belt would be the preferred place to start.
So Saturn's rings are basically made up from the debris from Meldeck, basically just all the stuff coming in from the rings.
Not just that. Saturn's rings were used as almost a weapon, as a solar weapon. Those rings have bases there. They're solid bases made of glass and stuff. So Saturn's rings are actually off limits to be mined because there's classified stuff there that other civilizations made.
Yeah. If there's any artifacts in there, then it would be absolutely off limits. Yeah.
Off limits completely. And Saturn's rings are used as basically energy waveforms to send subliminal messages to Earth, to humans and other civilizations. Depends who takes control of those rings, because many different people try to take control over them, because it's like an amplified antenna. There's technology there in those rings that are still active that can send signals, subliminal signals, to people and to technology like the pyramids to activate them to do certain things. So those Saturn rings are off limits. They're not mined, and they'll never be mined because there's tech there that's still being used. Not to its fullest potential, not as a weapon, but it's like an activating antenna that you could use to harmonize different things, your mood, people's moods, people's actions, certain advanced technology like the pyramids to create energy, to do this and that.
Everything's a grid, right? So everything's just a grid together.
Yes. There's those rings are like a platform of a sort where you could actually go in and there's electronics there, there's a base there. On the rings, it's like a ring world, basically. In Halo, like in Halo, like a ring world in the video game.
Like Uranus as well too has the small rings, and it's more just tilted on its axis. And
Uranus's wings are more. Uranus's those rings are more natural. Saturn's aren't. They're man-made.
They're manufactured.
Yeah, and they were destroyed partially because it was like a weapon that was destroyed. So there's debris from this weapon spinning. It looks like rocks, but it's not really rocks. It's spinning.
So were they basically just trying to enhance the natural rings of Saturn and make it much bigger? And
Saturn didn't have rings naturally, actually.
at all? Okay.
Not at all. Those rings are man-made, and they're now half of it is debris field from this platform exploding, this crystalline platform exploding, which was going to be used
So it
as a
sounds like
weapon.
a type of magnetic technology. They're just kind of able to mesh this kind of magnetic ring orbit.
Yes.
Around
Yes.
Torsion physics. It's actually an effect of torsion physics, but I won't go into lecturing about torsion physics. But it has to do with the torsion fields that spin around and then create larger spinning fields and so forth.
Exactly.
Torsion physics. Yeah.
Some of those rings are still active technology around Saturn, so it's never going to be mined because there's nothing there you want to mine.
Well, especially when you got a big asteroid field, and you got all this material ready to be digested, right? So okay, here's one from David Violet. David asks, is it possible for individuals to volunteer to be a part of the secret space program, and if so, what is the criteria to be chosen for it?
Not at this point. Not at this time. If you're not military personnel and you're not on a short list for acceptance or consideration, not at this time. There's no place to sign up. I know everyone wants to. That's one of the things we keep telling people is, look, tell people there's a program. They'll line up to sign up. I mean, you're not going to have a problem getting people in. Exactly. So, we just keep telling them, tell everybody you'll have a line of people to sign up. You won't have to worry about personnel problems anymore.
So they kind of just monitor you, like with your situation, Elena's a bit different, but with you, Randy, it was like they were just kind of like monitoring you with your service in the military, right? And they chose you and brought you into the space program.
Well, no. I mean, I was engineered from the ground up. So, I mean, from the very get-go, I was designed and engineered to be a soldier. I mean, that was from the very, very get-go. I essentially, my DNA is patented somewhere. There's a file on my creation and my formation at some point. I have a military hardware serial number. So, in some ways, I'm a toaster. I mean, I mean, I have human rights and all that kind of issues. I mean, there are these other issues about I'm not just a toaster, but also in a very real way. Like, there's a number that identifies me as hardware, so I'm also a toaster.
Yeah. They wanted me...
Built from the ground up, so yeah.
They wanted me for a totally different reason, because I'm an ET soul that's incarnated on Earth, but I still have all my ET traits and information and stuff. So the program wanted me for those abilities, for those traits, for the information that I had. They literally mined that information and used it as part of my service record in the program. So that's why they wanted me, because you can extract ET cellular memories of previous lives, of previous existences as an ET being off-world. So for them, they wanted that stuff from me, those abilities, those characteristics. And that's why I was put into the program for 60 years, because I could do a bunch of different things and adapt to different projects where they could put me and do this, do that. And the reason why I stayed for 60 years, because they kept my health maintenance great. I was healthy as a horse when I was in the program, because they have certain things that they use to make you healthy and good. Good conditions. I just didn't want to leave.
There you go.
Hey, you're happy doing what you like, playing with your tech, making all these great things, doing these exciting projects, linguistics, you're meeting all these ET species. It's not as bad as it sounds. It was a good gig for 60 years.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I was healthy as a horse. So that was my motive for staying as long as I did, but they did kick me out eventually. You have to have your human life too. You have to have your human experiences. You were born on this planet, so you have to experience that, and you have to go back. No, I don't want to. You have to go. You have to go back.
Yeah.
Special section officers have life commissions, so we accept a commission for life. We don't get to retire. So I don't now that I'm back in duty, I don't ever get to go back to my normal life. There's no normal life. I'm simply at this
that
job.
is one of the questions I wanted to ask you. Are you guys still very much involved with the SSP, like getting information from them and finding out what's happening? That you get common intel that's coming in through the SSP through both of you?
I'm considered an active duty field commander.
Okay.
I'm not active duty, but sometimes I get pulled back in for doing this and that, and they erase my memory, but then I get it all back and I report on it anyway.
Yeah.
The
Because
problem with
you had Lieutenant Colonel Gonzalez talk to you recently about this.
yes,
This dolled you up in that sense that you could talk to these
yes,
hammerhead shark-like beings, right?
yes. That was weird. They had me dress up. They straightened my hair. They put me in a dress. They had me meet these shark hammerhead beings that are fed up with being in secrecy and in hiding. They they needed some negotiation, so they brought me in on that, and they made me forget. But then I remembered. The problem with me, I like to disclose everything and report everything on YouTube and talk about it, so
Yeah.
they can't really have me back into the program because they wipe my memory, and then 2 or 3 days later, I just remember
You just
everything
get it
because
back. Yeah.
I get it back. I have a photographic eidetic memory, and I'm in contact with other species. My job is to do disclosure and represent other species as a friend, as a person who's met this person in ET alliances. I'm supposed to report back on it and talk about my experiences to help others to do that, to do disclosure. So I'm an asset for the SSP, and I'm also a deterrent to them because I will report on everything that I see and
There you
hear, and
go.
if I think it's
I'd
good
be the same
enough.
way. I mean, swear to God, I'd be the same way because I'm all about disclosure and sharing all this information as well too. So in the same
So
boat there. Yeah.
they like to use me, but they also don't like to put me in
Yes.
because I
Maybe it's
will.
only the things. Okay, we have to use Elena for this because this is the situation that comes up, right? So.
Yeah, but the problem is I'll remember everything and I'll talk about it, and they're
Right.
very classified stuff that they do. So if I talk
Yeah.
about it, it could get me in trouble too. So
Yeah.
certain
Exactly.
things I won't say and report on, but a lot of things I will.
Hmm.
And for me, it's a lot more what's happening to me with my ET communications and talking to all of these ET alliances. And that's something I do on my own psionically. So I don't need the secret space program to find out stuff that I want to know about the universe. I can just remote view or teleport myself to this place and that place and just see for myself what all of these programs are doing. I don't
Well, Lena,
rely on
you've
them.
talked about building a light body. Now, what is the process of doing that? How does one construct their light body?
Well, first you
So they
have
actually
to
go to different planes of existence.
before you even construct a light body, you have to know who you were and who you are. You have to prepare yourself mentally for this, physically for this. You have to have everything in balance as perfectly as you can before you actually start to visually dematerialize yourself and become energy that you could float out in space, literally exit your human body, float out in space. Your human body is still sleeping there, and this is not astral projection. You literally manifest a light body for yourself where you're half human, you're half energy. You're just going off and floating in space. You don't need a spaceship. You just go out to a planet, you visit who you want, you see who you want, you observe what you want, and nobody can interfere with you. That's a light body, basically.
Okay. And you also did a lot of reconnaissance work with going into astral states and actually being able to spy on certain
Yes,
beings and all
yes,
that.
I've been happily spying on the ICC for a year and a half now and reporting on what they're doing
Hmm.
because what they're doing on Mars is not very lawful. They have 4 bases. They're basically violating human rights left and right. They're doing transhumanism. They're doing all kinds of unacceptable experiments. And I feel it's my duty to report on that stuff. So I have been spying on
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I've had repercussions. They've attacked me
Oh
numerous
yeah, I remember you were
times.
telling me about that. Yeah, absolutely.
I've had 2 different assassins sent after me to try one reptilian human hybrid, one cobra human
Yeah.
hybrid. They couldn't attack me anymore, so they went after my cat. They burned my cat, 3rd-degree
After the
burns.
cat. Yeah. Wow.
After the
Oh,
cat, anything they can go after, they will, just
Yeah.
to stop you from talking.
Hmm. So,
So
let's talk about transhumanism. Randy, you were talking about when I was interviewing you that basically the Draconians would basically have these kind of weapons where they would have like transhuman, they try and suck you up into technology and wire you in, and once that happens, you can't get out. Like, how does this work with this transhumanism or cybernetic technology?
Um, it's again, I wouldn't say it's my strongest area. I would say that it's a it starts at being a neutral tool. When you want to change something or you want to alter it, it becomes really when you start to lean into either light or corrupted light, is based on everything you do and what you intend from that point. So I don't think that just because you want to change or alter something from its natural state that is necessarily a negative or bad thing. It is most often the lack of understanding or responsibility in the effect of those interactions or fusing of technologies and information, which cause sort of dysfunctional malfeasance. I think if you really understand what you're doing and you're self-aware about your process, that any changing thing that you're going through, or any self-changing or other changing, technological or otherwise, can be a positive process. Let's just say that. Going through your own genetic evolution process is a form of transhumanism. It is a form of transforming, transcending your own human nature into a superhuman nature, or from a 5-sensory human to a multi-sensory human is another form of terminology to say that. So that in itself is a form of transhumanism. So I think that where the problem becomes is when people who are doing those things start to disrespect what the body is for. Instead of just trying to we need to put better stuff on this body. We can just slap some better stuff and it'll be great. Instead of just trying to slap a bigger carburetor and bigger stacks on that thing and how about think about what the whole purpose of that thing is, so that any alterations that you're doing are again with the grain of that purpose. And that comes right back to the 1965 report that we did on the super soldier programs, which is basically, look, many of these programs are using methodologies which are harming the subject and creating a shorter term, a shorter gain, and a higher rate of self-destruction. If we actually want to alter our soldiers and people in a way that is with the grain of who and what they are and their natural states and their natural tendencies, you end up with less conflict. So in that very sense, we started a policy that said, look, we're not going to want to alter someone, put an implant in them, or add a new piece of technology or machinery unless it's something that we absolutely can't do through self-enhancement, do through personal evolvement or psionic development, and that then if we have to add anything else, that we preferably have it be an external device, not something that you actually install or necessarily plug right into your interface or something on the back of your head, because we think that those definitions, those boundaries are important based on all these other things that we've seen happen in the intergalactic community of people doing this, what we can say, very badly, or maybe better, or our last 50 years of doing it badly. So we think there is a clear ethical standard for changing anything, physically, mechanically, cybernetically, and observing how other people do that horribly is how we want to avoid that, and understanding ethical boundaries which respect the human nature and the human consciousness and the human spirit in that interaction can create positive interactions which help civilization develop instead of crumble. But anytime that you take someone and you start transcending or transforming that human being into something that is more machine and less human, that's when you're risking taking whatever you're growing into civilization and crushing it into some kind of, matrix machine civilization or something like that, or how you end up with the Draconians.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess that's my better answer to that question.
That's a good explanation as well, too. All right, guys, we're going to go to our last question. Elena, if you want to follow up with that, and we're going to go to our last question.
Yeah, I do. It's good to organically evolve yourself psionically and to develop and adapt your abilities, so you don't have to have external cybernetic devices attached to you. Or some people have etheric implants, which aren't tech per se. It's more like etheric energy implants. I have ocular implants that I volunteered to get.
Yeah.
It with my own permission. It wasn't against my will. I have those etheric implants where I could virtually record anything that I see, and they help me remember and match up faces and people and time dates and stuff. So, and I use that to do disclosure work. I have those voluntarily. I voluntarily agreed to them. They don't harm me. They're actually doing something good for me. They don't take away from my life force energy. They don't ruin my body. So it's really what you sign up for and agree to. That's the thing. You have to know what you're getting with these things. You have to know it and what it's used for, whether it's for harm, whether it's for good, for the benefit or not. And don't agree to anything you don't think you should have. That's against your will, is basically transhumanism.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, we call those holographic implants, and they absolutely are less invasive, and they have less sort of negative complementary effects to them for sure. So, and I love my implants. You know, it just is a point of how we do things differently. I'm very happy with what I have. They do me very well. They keep me healthy and alive, and a lot of other things that I am perfectly content with and have no objection to. So it is perfectly possible to end up with a series of implants or genetic alterations that you are perfectly happy and a better person with without them having negative or corrupted light effects. But it is about the who, the what, the intention, where it comes from, how it's made. Those are all things that matter, and what goes into your body and changes you, for sure.
Well, that's true as well, because even with myself, I have quite a few hollow ethereal implants all within the brain as well too. Even when healers try to work on me, they're basically getting instructions from my guides and say, "Don't touch this area with it. Don't touch that."
Right. Don't touch that.
Don't even think about going close to that one. You know,
Yeah.
Otherwise we got to redo everything again, right? So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting with these hollow ethereal implants.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
they're a super interesting technology, very.
It
Or
is absolutely.
Or if you sometimes have something that was put against your will, like nanobots, nanonites,
Yes.
you can have those taken out because sometimes they do more harm.
Yep.
They neutralize your neural system, your autoimmune system. They screw up with your body functions. You want to get those out, and you can.
Yeah, so
There
Jonas
are-
is also
Well,
just talking
another
about.
option with those, because I actually had a whole set of nanites that were draconian nanites that were implanted maybe by someone else. But one of my higher self said, well, you actually can take those over. You can actually commandeer them and take them over and reprogram them. So after a year of commandeering and reprogramming them, like they're a completely different configuration now, and they work for me. And I completely, owned them and repurposed them and rebuilt them. So also, another possibility that people need to understand is if you don't like your implant, you can change it yourself. You can fix it, reprogram it. You can shut things off, turn things on. It was a super amazing yoga teacher of mine who I'd known for years, who's been teaching Kundalini yoga for decades, who basically said, when I was like, oh, I got all these implants, I don't know what to do. And he's like, oh, that's great. And I was like, what do you mean that's great? And he said, well, if it's in your body, it belongs to you. So they gave you something that you now can take over and make work for you. And just putting it in that spin was the first time I went, oh, maybe I could do that. And just being able to understand that thought that if it's in your body, it belongs to you, completely changed my relationship with anything that I felt was in my body that was out of my control and was no, that is now in my control because it's in my body, it belongs to me.
Well, that's true as well. Jonas was also talking about that there's an interventional fleet that you can actually call upon psionically if you feel that these implants can actually happen. They will actually work with you, mainly in dream time a lot, and actually just start taking this out. So he actually gave a symbol. It's kind of like a triangle with a slash through it. And he said there's Pleiadian interventional fleets, there's Sirian interventional fleets, there's even Earth interventional fleets.
Absolutely. No, that was certainly a part of my healing process when I had to ask for help for some stuff, and so there was definitely an intergalactic team that's their job is to sort of do that and
take care of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, same for me. I just had an infestation of Draco implants that I tried to reprogram, but I couldn't repurpose them. So 36,000 of these suckers had to go. So because I rely on myself to psionically improve myself as I need to or want to, so I don't need like negative implants in me. So I just had galactic help taking those out. So it depends on what you want and what you need too.
Exactly. Okay, guys, we're going to go to our last question because we're going to wrap it up here real quick. The last question is, are there different SSPs, Secret Space Program operatives, more inclined to slow down partial disclosure or trying to speed it up to full disclosure that will quickly dump most of this information within the next year or so?
I don't know about that. I think there's always going to be people who want to drag their heels more, and there's always going to be people who want to push the throttle faster. And I think that there's absolutely information dumps that are happening. As I've said at the beginning, Snowden, the rest of the Snowden papers are coming out. That's a data dump. There are the possibility of other bits of data that would be coming along and will get dumped out. But I don't know. That's if someone's going to have the ability to, or if someone's going to be, no, I'm going to release it all, and they release some giant stack of data that no one else can stop. That can happen. I mean, whistleblowers can happen. But if it goes the way they want it to go, we're going to have kind of what will be a quickening spiral of sort of things changing, and then there'll be sort of a, we're entering that now, and the guy will come out of it some months later, and when we do, we'll just be in this whole other world that won't be so shocking to us because of the way that it changed, and it'll just be the world we live in, like today is the world we live in. So
Yeah.
except it'll just have other things to it. There will be more nouns, that we'll be using in our vocabulary that
Exactly.
will describe our world, but our world will still just be our world. So.
Yeah, I mean, Adronis has talked about that during this fall, this coming winter, that there's going to be a big shift that's happening, and basically where a lot of people are going to be locked into fourth density, and there it'll still just be compatible with first, second, third density. So the third density people that are here, we're still going to be interacting with. But basically, you've chosen a theme to explore a lot more in regards to self-improvement, to betterment, and all that stuff.
Right.
So that's basically coming our way as well too.
Yeah, I think so.
Elena, what have you got information again the next few months that are coming up as well?
Well, there's different SSP groups, and they all have their own agendas. Some want full disclosure, some want to slow it down, some don't want it to happen at all. But there's also the Earth Alliance. It's not just the SSPs. There's the Earth Alliance that takes care of stuff here on the ground, the ground crew, so to speak. So.
Yes. Yep.
It's up to them as well to negotiate with SSPs and to make deals and to disclose as much as they need to or want to. So it's not just one group making this decision. It's a bunch of groups coming together to see
Absolutely.
what's best for the people and what's best for the security and safety of this planet as well, to not cause chaos, riots, disruptions. I would hope they would limit disruption as much as possible and make it as smooth as possible. I want full disclosure, and I think it should come out, but I think it should come out in an appropriate way where it doesn't scare people and create
I think that's where
fear.
a lot of people are kind of in that state. They feel that oh my God, there's so much chaos on the planet right now. There's so much happening. Is this going to slim down, or what's going to happen here? Right? So.
Well, they're trying their best to limit this as much as possible to create the least amount of chaos as possible. Certain SSP groups who are higher on the food chain want that. Lower SSPs don't really have the say-so of what's going on. They get to put out limited disclosure, and that's what they put out. That's what their orders are.
Yeah.
And
but it's kind
also
of like knowing that you have transition, right? You're going into a transition. All this stuff needs to come out. It's exposure, and of course, it's going to create a little bit of shaking up. So that kind of creates the chaos.
And it's also based on people and what people want to disclose about their experiences. If you were in the SSP and now you want to talk about it, and it's on your mind, you have this mission you want to do, get out there, talk to Brad, talk to Randy, put yourself out there to disclose this. It's also up to us what we disclose and know.
Exactly.
It's up to the
That's
people.
right. And it's interesting too because there's a lot of SSP people that are receiving memories coming back that want to say, hey, I want to talk to you about the memories that I'm getting. I said, absolutely. We'll come on the show and just start talking about what you're sharing. It feels like quite a few other new people from the SSP who are actually regaining their memories. Now, is there a tactic that people can use who maybe feel that I feel like I've been a soldier here. I feel like I've had some type of specialist in the SSP. Is there a type of tactic that they can use or a technique that they can use to help them improve their memories relating to these memories that they're receiving?
Psychic development for sure. Your psychic abilities, you want to develop that. You want to do memory regression. Those are things that help me remember everything. And just the way my memories came back is through actually reliving my military training. All of a sudden, this is funny, but it's interesting. All of a sudden, I had an urge to go and do weapons training, restricted and non-restricted, handguns, paramilitary rifles, assault rifles. So I went and I did all this military training, and I am certified to fire these things. And that was like, why am I doing this? Am I losing my mind? No, that was part of my military training, and I have all of these things. I also did sword fighting because I was trained hand-to-hand combat and sword fighting and boxing, and I went and did all that training, martial arts, stick fighting. That was part of my SSP training for all of these things. I wasn't actively active in combat, but I'm fully trained to do this stuff right now. And then riding motorcycles, that was another thing I learned to do because apparently I love to drive these things in the SSP. And in my other ET lifetime. So this is part of my training that I actively relived to relearn it. So these things can come back to you in bits and pieces, and you're like, why am I doing this? How is this part of my life? And then you remember, oh, but I used to do this. I'm trained for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So all kinds of ways.
Randy, how about you?
I would actually say that the main thing to memory is your alpha bridge, and probably one of the best ways to expand the opening of your alpha bridge is with a dream journal. So essentially by keeping something that you can write in next to your bed, and then when you wake up, and the instant that you wake up, because it goes so quickly, your alpha bridge just closes so quickly, write down whatever you can, anything you can, to every last detail that you can. And what that does is by basically you're using a crowbar to hold your alpha bridge open for a few seconds longer while it closes, and then but the more you do that, instead of it snapping shut every time more and more, I mean, I noticed that when I do it regular, which I don't as much as I should, I'll start and I'll be able to write 3 lines, and then a paragraph, and then over time I'll get in 2.5 pages, per, wake up and recall, because it's got that much of a bridge. You'll start to recall, and then you go, oh wait, and then before that, and then this happened, and then you're literally, your mind will start to recall it back because your alpha bridge has been pried open. So main access to memory is alpha bridge. There's so many ways that you can deal with that. Basic, high performance mind training, and anything that you can do for psionic development. Yeah, but I would recommend specifically an alpha bridge technique, like keeping a dream journal.
Great, excellent. All right, so we're going to wrap it up, guys. Randy, did you want to share your website with everybody and contact info?
Yes, it is earthcitizenconsulting.org, and I have some basic information there, a link to my YouTube channel, which has interviews and stuff that I've done, and some contact information there for people who feel like they have something that they need to contact me for.
Okay.
And that's about it. I'm not really planning any public appearances or anything at the moment. We're figuring that the psionics curriculum will get back to completing and having that DVD like I was planning about sometime in 2017. Someone was asking me to go speak in Tokyo, but they had an auditorium change, so we changed the date from the fall to we don't know when right now. But other than that, I'm very busy doing the work that I'm doing right now and not really planning much of anything else in the future. But I'm around if people need me for something.
Sure, sounds good. I'd love to have you on again as well, too. We're just scratching the surface with all this amazing stuff, and I have a blast with you, too, so it's great. Elena, how about you? Your contact info and website?
Yes, Messages from a Star Traveler. You could type it in Google, or you could type in the URL, which is elenalist.wix.com/Star Traveler Messages. And I do host my own radio show on YouTube, pre-recorded, or on Google Hangouts, Awakening Cosmic Reality Show. I also put up learning presentations there. I do stuff that's psychic, like if you want to remember something, there's memory recall, self-guided meditations on. So, you name it, I do it. Healing stuff, teaching stuff, and it's all there for free for the public. It's because I'm doing my thing about disclosure and teaching. It's my mission. So you can find me there and try to my best to participate in other interviews with you guys or what's very important. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, both Randy and Elena. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for tuning into this broadcast. We did a wonderful 3-hour show today. So this will be up on recording here probably the next half hour. It's going to do a little bit of rendering, and then it should be up on my YouTube channel. And thank you everybody for coming on today. You can go ahead and check out my website as well, realitywhisperer.com. Again, this coming Tuesday, we have the Reality Whisperer webcast with guest Joshua Warren. And then, of course, the Tuesday after that, another new Secret Space Program insider, Johnny Alpha, will be joining us, and he's going to be talking about his experiences with the SSP and, of course, with Mars as well. So thank you both, Randy and Elena, and thank you so much for having me having you on the show. And I look forward to speaking to you guys soon. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.